Ever feel like you're being watched? Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime Metrix. I'm your host, J. Edgar Hoover, coming at you live from the basement of the secret volcano underlayer. With us as always is resident sound controlist, a Labrador called Soap, who is the same colour as a chocolate cake and 3 times as yummy. What are we looking at tonight, folks? First, we've got to say a big, huge front seat welcome to the first person in chat, riding shotgun. Seems fitting. She only gets in the back seat for one reason, and when it suits her. Welcome, riding shotgun, and everyone else in chat. This is fantastic. Victoria Girl, members, Clarissa, Mr. Pinto Peabody. Looking good, Pinto. I've got to show a picture of your cat. Your fantastic cat with your fantastic Judge Everett mug. Slept like a baby. I think it's great that you're loving the merchandise, Pinto. Where is that cat? I guess it should be over in our pet section, Metrix pet section. Where is our cat? Or maybe we want to show the lovely dog first. Do we want to do that? Yeah, tonight we're going to be having a look at why, how, who did, Catherine Magbanua get that mistrial for, I'm sure that we could go back and forth with that, ideas. We could go back and forth like a tennis match, right? I mean, just 2 rackets and a ball and a net and an umpire. That'll be good. Let's have a look at our resident sound control list. Where is that resident? There she is. Ooh, looking good. Amanda, thank you so much for the 2 coffees, Amanda. That's fantastic. There we go. No headphones. She saw me with my new earbuds and got jealous and then smashed her old Sony's to bits. Threw them in the river. Thug that she is. Yes, okay. Well, I think we should get to it, guys. Welcome everybody in chat. What we're going to be doing. How are we looking at it? We're looking at it through the lens of Cristopher DeCoste's fantastic and vibrant closing argument. I mean, talk about one last sell. One last sell. He really went for it. And I think it's impressive. And I've become aware that a lot of people in Discord, they've never seen it. They've never actually sat down and watched Cristopher DeCoste's closing argument in Magbanua 1, the joint trial of Sigfredo and Catherine back in 2019. How long ago was that? 6 whole years. Roll tape, please.
Ready to be seated, please. May I proceed, Mr. DeCoste?
Thank you. The less you know, the better. That's what Sigfredo Garcia said to Catherine Magbanua in 2016 over the wiretaps. It's also what this government wants from you. Because the more that you know about this case, the more facts, the more you realize that the pieces don't fit and that she is innocent. During voir dire, we talked about Prince Charles, and we talked about perception versus reality. Everyone Everyone here remembers the photo that we presented of Prince Charles, and it gave a very limited view. That's what the government has done here. They've given you bits and pieces. They've tried to give you a perception of Catherine Magbanua's involvement. Because, again, the more evidence, the less it fits. The defense, and you remember this from voir dire, we've given you the full picture. Not them. Ms. Kappelman can get up here and say, we gave you the information, we didn't do this bits and pieces thing. They did. We had to, on cross-examination, over and over again, bring to you evidence that put their evidence in the proper light.
You see, already, straight out the gate, Cristopher DeCoste has adopted the character of defender of the little man, little woman, right? Defender of the little woman against the fury and power of the state. And that's a great position for a defense attorney to take. If you can do it well, which he can, you know? And he's appealing to the members of the jury, each and every one of them, individually and as a group, to be arbiter, to set it right. To say, hey, big state, you don't push around that little woman, big state. That's what he's appealing. Just in his tone, and he hasn't even said anything yet.
Let me give you a roadmap of what I'm going to talk about. Okay. The first thing, roadmap. The first thing I'm going to talk about is how the investigation into Catherine Magbanua was not objective. The second thing, the dismissal by the government, the outright dismissal of the problems and the conflicts with Luis Rivera's testimony. The third thing, how the government is ignoring evidence of Catherine Magbanua's innocence. Now, before we get deeper into it, the government, they talked about their burden. They have to prove two things: that a crime was committed, and that the person or persons they've charged were involved in it. A majority of the evidence in this case, a vast majority of it, proves that a crime was committed. It's all over there on that table. We don't disagree with any of that evidence. We absolutely agree. Look, I've spent years looking at this case. And if I've learned anything, Professor Dan Markel was a brilliant scholar, a devoted father, an amazing son. For his family, no parent should ever have to bury a child, let alone sit in a courtroom and watch the first-degree murder trial, the gruesome first-degree murder trial for their son. For the people of Tallahassee, and Ms. Kappelman said it best, suffered a blow. Crimes impact everyone, especially this case. Those who are responsible, and again, they spent hours.
Thank you, Keith, for the like button clicking. That's a very good thumb you have, Keith. Everybody else, yeah, please do. Remember to click the like button. It does help us out enormously.
Hours, days talking about the Adelsons. Those responsible must be brought to justice. The Adelsons. Now, given all of this emotion, it's resulted in...
This is another thing he does quite well in 2019, certainly. Of course, at Catherine's retrial, Charlie had been arrested prior to trial. You know, he's saying they want to get the Adelsons, but they can't. They don't have enough evidence. So they've got to do something. So what do? They blame Charlie's girlfriend at the time. They say that she was the middle woman because they're so frustrated. And when they're so frustrated, they get mad. And when they get mad, they blame the wrong person. right? He's actually outlining inadequacies of the state as well as their, what would you call it? You know, whatever the word is, putting the blame in the wrong place.
Desperation for the government. You heard it for them. It took
desperation. You see, Cristopher DeCoste knows why. Because he's running this. He's running this very well. And whatever you think about the points he's making, you know, I don't agree with them. I see holes all over the place. But I can appreciate a man that's good at his craft.
a while to figure out a theory to move forward on the case. But that's what happened. They came to a determination on their theory. They came to a determination on their theory. Then they started to look at Katie Magbanua. But when they looked at her, they didn't look at her to objectively investigate her. Instead, they tried to build a case around her to force her to cooperate so that they could get what they've been going after for years now, the Adelson family. Someday, there will likely be a jury in this courthouse determining the fate of one or all the Adelsons. But you're not that jury. You're here, and again, these are separate cases. It's State of Florida v. Sigfredo Garcia. State of Florida v. Katie Magbanua. We talked about it in jury selection. These are not together. It's not a package deal.
Okay, it's not a package deal. There are two separate defense closing arguments here, and we'll go to Mr. Hand Grenade. Possibly. I think Cristopher DeCoste is up here for about 90 minutes, so we should be able to have a look at Mr. Hand Grenade's shorter closing arguments, because that makes even less sense. Okay. The closing argument in defense of Sigfredo Garcia's case, a separate case, joint trial, but separate defenses. Right. But Mr. Pinto Peabody says, what's the trip to me is how shocked Catherine was when she got found guilty. Finally, she was just in shock and tears. Both times she was in tears. She thought she would have taken the deal. Yeah, well, she should have done. I mean, it's amazing that she was offered full immunity again after the mistrial. If I was the state, I'd be like, yeah, you made us jump through that hope. So the new deal is you do 30 years and we'll waive the life sentence. You know, it just seems that the stakes, it would be logical to think that the stakes would change if you've put the state through all that work, the cost to the taxpayer, George's time, pressure on the, you know, the prosecution, the judge, the court, the jury, everything like that. It makes sense that the stakes would have changed. The deal would have changed. The offer, what's on the table, changes. But it didn't. Full immunity again. Tell us everything you know, and you walk. No charges. No record. Done. I mean, why would you say no to that? Of course, Katie Magbanua will say, well, Sigfredo was up for the death sentence, and I couldn't do that. Well, you know, I mean, I don't think that was it. I think her defense counsel told her, you know, convinced her. They said, listen, we've got this. We've got this. We've got to do this, this, and this. And if we're going to train you, and they didn't. They didn't train her well at all. She didn't know basic facts. She was lost up there both times. I think she did worse in her second trial, but that was probably because Pitbull Sarah Dugan was doing the cross-examination and just did not let go of her bite for 1 second, Sarah Dugan, did you? You know, we all know Georgia's tough. She's the bear. Sarah's the pit bull. But Tara Kawas and Cristopher DeCoste, mainly Tara Kawas, I think. I think she's the one that's got the relationship with Katie too. you know, woman to woman, that sort of thing. I don't know. What's driving that motive, Tara? Were you hired by the Adelsons to put this through, you know? Will we ever know that for sure? Probably not. Probably not. Should we take a pause? Should we take a pause to have a look at Pinto's fabulous cat with her fabulous mug? Where is it? Well, I just saved it, didn't I? Oh, there it is. No. Hang on. Save. Ah. There you go. Look at that fabulous cat with that fabulous mug. If you would like a Judge Everett mug, slept like a baby, you can head over to merch.truecrimemetrics.com and have a look at all of our fabulous merch, including Judge Everett mugs in a range of colours. A range of colours for your cat, for your dog, for your spouse, for your mother, your father, your colleague, your priest. Whoever. Maybe one of each.
You're here to determine the guilt individually of Catherine Magbanua. And again, she's innocent. You know, if the government wants to charge the Adelsons, charge them. It appears that they have more evidence against them than the defendants in this courtroom.
Well, not Sigfredo.
You know, years ago, many, many years ago in our civilization, in times of strife, drought, famine, we'd be willing to sacrifice the innocent for the betterment of all. But we all know we've advanced as a society. What happened to Dan Markel was tragic, but convicting an innocent woman doesn't fix that. Nor does it in any way honor the memory of Professor Dan Markel. Now, two things the government has to do. Prove that a crime was committed. There was a crime. He was murdered. We absolutely do not disagree with that. But with respect to Miss Magbanua, they have to prove that she was involved. All of that has to do with the crime. This stack right here, which includes financials, which includes CDs, wiretaps. This is the case against her. This right here, this is the evidence against her. Our first topic, how the investigation into Catherine Magbanua was not objective. Instead, it was to build a case because of what their target is. Let me give you some examples, and we saw it in this trial from some of the witnesses. And we saw the early stages of objectivity, the middle stages, in the testimony. Investigator Jason Newland took the stand. He talked about how he got information about a gun, and he went out and found that gun, but how that gun didn't match up with the case. But he didn't just leave it there. He didn't just dismiss it. No. He took photographs of it. He brought out two other personnel from the prosecutor's office. They cataloged it. They turned it in. They checked it back out. They brought it to FDLE, and you heard from the FDLE analyst, Danabeth Ritchie, how she went through a very extensive process of evaluating that gun. All the paperwork that she put together. All the review she did. That it wasn't a quick process. Now, that was very early in the trial. And it may not have made sense at that time, but it was for this explanation now. That's what objectively reviewing a piece of evidence looks like. Jason Newland didn't just say, well, it doesn't apply, I'm not going to look at it. No, he still went through the proper steps. Because if there isn't objectivity in this process, it leads to wrongful convictions. It leads to misunderstood evidence. Next, we saw it from Sean Yao. He was the one that talked about the height of the shooter. Now, he had a bunch of variables, sort of like the government has their pieces of evidence. He knew the positioning of the seat, the height of Professor Markel.
Thank you so much, Pinto, for those fabulous 5 coffees. That's very kind of you, Pinto. And we hope your cat loves her mug. It looks great on her, it really does. Brings out the eyes. Thank you for the coffees, Pinto.
The point of entry in the window. And he was able to come to, not a certainty, but it's consistent with a taller shooter. But when I asked him, I go, you can't say that it could have been something else. There could have been a variable off. The seat could have moved. He could have been in a different position. He goes, look, I can't do that. That's looking at the evidence objectively. I can't tell you beyond a reasonable doubt that the height of the shooter was this, but it's consistent with it. Translation, it fits, but it's not enough. Last we saw from Sergeant Chris Corbett, talked about the cell phone stuff, took the stand every other day in this trial. He was asked questions about the cell phone stuff.
The cell phone stuff. You know, calling it the cell phone stuff. You mean the extensive location-based evidence that he did with all of his special gadgets. The cell phone stuff, whatever it was. That stuff, that wasn't any good stuff. You know, all of these tricks, they're in the little book of defense lawyer tricks. That thing he did a minute ago. Years ago, before our society had become civilized and we would be willing to sacrifice for the greater of the many, you know, it's like those are the things, aren't they? That are in defense law for dummies or whatever. Not for dummies, but you know, they're just standard things. I think it's in the second trial, the closing in the second trial, where he goes on about, when I was a little boy, my father worked away a lot, and he would travel for business, and he was driving in the Midwest, and he saw a barn with targets all over the barn, painted on the barn. And every arrow that the boy would shoot hit the bullseye. And he had to stop, and he said, how do you hit the bullseye every time with all the targets on the barn? And the boy said to my dad, you want me to show you? And he took the bow and arrow, and he aimed and fired the bow and arrow, and it hit the barn, but not in any target. And then he grabbed a bucket of paint, and he went to where the arrow hit the barn, and he drew the target around the barn. That's what they're trying to do with my client. I think he went a bit far with that. He kept coming back to it throughout the closing. He was like, the state, they just keep painting those circles. Bigger and bigger, brighter and brighter. It got a bit much in the end, Chris. Nice story.
Some of my questions, that it wasn't accurate what he was saying. Now, when I say not accurate, I'm not saying what he was saying was inaccurate, but that this whole thing with cell phone technology, when they show a map and there's a dot, doesn't mean that they can prove that the person was there. We heard it from Mr. Garcia's expert. You can be miles and miles and miles away. And I asked Sergeant Corbett the question, basically you can say that these people were all in the general vicinity of Miami on a given time. He gave those answers. That's being objective. He didn't try to stick to his guns and go, no.
Well, happy anniversary, Queen Olive. What is the 13th wedding anniversary? Lace. Happy lace. Yeah, a little way off silver and gold, but, you know, lace is good too. As I always say, lace has a place.
Fight it, gave the good with the bad. These are examples. We have both the investigation stage and the testimony stage. That's what objectivity looks like and should look like in this courtroom and during the investigation. But again, the investigation of Catherine Magbanua was not objective. You know, when I was a kid, my father, he traveled a lot for business. And he told me a story once.
Oh, here we go. It is in this one. The barn story. When I was a kid, my father, he traveled a lot for business.
How he was out in the Midwest, and he's driving along a road. There's a bunch of farms, and he sees, and it's pretty close to the roadway, he sees a side of a barn. There's a young kid out there. And on the side of the barn, there's a few bullseyes. And there's an arrow right in the bullseye. He had to find out, how is it that this kid is so good, little kid, how is he so good at hitting the bullseye? My father drove over, he asked him, and the kid said, "I'm going to show you." Kid fired a shot into the side of the barn, wildly missing all of the targets. But he hit the side of the barn. Then took a pail of paint, walked up, painted the target around the arrow. That's what the government is trying to do here to Catherine Magbanua. And we'll get into...
Well, you know, not all lace is for doilies and placemats. You know, some lace is very nice. Black lace, that's always a winner.
All the things they didn't do. They had leads. They didn't run it down. She worked at those nightclubs. They didn't go there. The idea was to paint the target around her, to force her to cooperate. Again, the government came up with their theory that it was the Adelsons. They identified Catherine, built a case around her. Now, in part, I don't fault the government for being personally motivated, interested. But you got to make sure that you don't turn a blind eye to other things. Let's go to the call activity. The government has made a big issue that Charles Adelson was communicating with Catherine Magbanua and that Catherine Magbanua was communicating with Sigfredo Garcia. Now, if there were no connections in between these people whatsoever, maybe some evidence. But there were. Catherine's dating Charles Adelson. It's only natural that she's going to call him. She has 2 children with Sigfredo Garcia. It's only natural that they're going to communicate. I don't doubt that most of the people in this courtroom, when they left for lunch, called the important people in their lives. That's normal. That happens. But the government, they gave you that very limited perception. They showed you certain days and go, they're talking. They even removed out other communications that Catherine and others were having with other people to make it look like the calls were going Sigfredo to Catherine, Catherine to Charles. You have it in evidence, in our evidence, not what they've submitted, in our evidence showing there's more calls that are in there. But it was important to pull a random day. And during trial, we pulled May 1st. Not an important day in the case. To show that this was normal levels of communication for Catherine, again, with the guy she was dating, and the father of her children. Next, and we're talking about the investigation into circumstantial evidence. Cash deposits. They saw cash in her account. And they presented it to you as unexplained cash. Trying to paint those circles around the arrow, brighter and brighter, thicker and thicker. Investigator Isom took the stand. He knew she was working at nightclubs. Quote, knew. 0 investigation was done. There was no reason. And his answer was, it was an oversight. Agent Sanford. His was, there was no doubt, quote, no doubt, she was making cash tips, which would explain this money coming into her account. But zero investigation was done. No subpoenas sent out. No interviews. The government had the audacity, despite the fact that it is their burden to say in their closing argument, where are the witnesses? Where are the witnesses? As if we have a responsibility. Had the FBI walked into those nightclubs, I have no doubt they would have given answers. But again, they never did it. But why? Why would they not do this? The reason is you go in there and you find out an explanation for that cash, those circles around that arrow start to evaporate a little bit. You lose a piece of evidence. Now, you may be thinking, well, if they were just trying to frame somebody, why would they create evidence? Well, there's a problem with that. It's easier to just suppress.
This is pretty clever, right? The FBI didn't need to go and, look for something that wasn't there. I mean, if every investigation had to do that, I mean, nothing would get done, would it? That would be a huge waste of resources. I don't even know if it was in contention at the time before Catherine's arrest and subsequent evidence gathering. But Chris is now saying, yeah, they didn't check her fake job. I mean, they've already got a stack of stuff to prove that she wasn't, not that she wasn't working at Club Fate and the Hollywood Live, but that there was no way that there would be any tips. We had Yindra on the stand that said a good night was like $400. That was a really good night, or whatever it was, whatever number it was. It was not fucking $2,000 a day job, Oh, but they didn't check with the bursar, the accountant. Yeah, well, how far do you want us to go with this thing? We've proven our case, but Chris DeCoste is now saying, yeah, well, if they had have done that, and if they had have done that and found a good reason, that would be something to work against them. That's why they didn't look, right? Which is bullshit. I mean, Georgia will do a good job at rebutting that. I don't know, maybe we should go on to Georgia's rebuttal after this, but we'll see. Maybe we can do the whole thing. I'm not going to do Georgia's opening cross, though. That's going to be too long.
Press it. To make it seem like...
not opening cross, I mean, her closing argument. We might have a look at her rebuttal, which will be shorter.
You never knew about it. If you create something, you got a problem. Because there may be something out there later on that will contradict it. We'll see that when we talk about Luis Rivera. It's better to just turn a blind eye like the ostrich with its head in the sand. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to see it. It's willful ignorance. It has no place in a murder investigation. Although we didn't have to. We presented evidence. Now, put it in context, our ability to get evidence. Katie Magbanua has been sitting in custody, in confinement for years. She was arrested years after this happened. The ability to then find evidence and put it together is a difficult process, but thankfully, the government subpoenaed records from Facebook. We had to submit to you. They presented it that there was no evidence whatsoever of cash-paying jobs. We presented to you from 2013 that she begins working promotions. Following later, and continuing until 2015, working at a larger nightclub. Now, there's one thing that the government didn't address, and I'm going to come back to the nightclubs. The fact that Sigfredo Garcia, during that time, the father of her 2 children, was not working the steady employment he was working later on. And that cash, similar to the $5,000 that was found inside of his car when he was arrested, would have been going to Miss Magbanua for the betterment of her children. Now, The government brought up Yindra Velasquez.
Hello, Clarissa, waving to you right now.
But you got to remember what she said. The government has tried to downplay the nightclub by saying bar. You know, how much somebody would make, a couple $100. We're talking about a nightclub in Miami. Not a bar, a nightclub in Miami.
A nightclub in Miami where the streets are paved with gold and the pigeons are shitting diamonds all over the sidewalk. This is a nightclub in Miami. Okay? The sort of places that you Tallahassee people could only dream of and see in movies. This is a nightclub in Miami.
Having special
A place where the soup is fucking $10.
events for celebrities, having big nights. She worked with Yindra Velasquez at a different location at a different time. In the middle of 2014, Yindra Velasquez said, I didn't know she was working there. Well, you got to remember, during that time, Yindra Velasquez was pregnant with a child. Catherine, her children, were born several years old. They're leading different lives at that time.
Thank you, Clarissa, for the super chat. Yeah, we created a goal, guys. Someone said to me the other day, why don't you go through the entire trial? Well, maybe we will. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a big job. It's going to take a while. But yeah. We put a goal on the chat. If that's something you'd like to see, show us you'd like to see it. Help us hit the goal. Help us hit the goal, you know. Thank you, Clarissa.
The government presented.
And Amy, thank you too.
A bar chart of deposits. They really started using this late in trial. Put a spike right there. First and foremost, if you're receiving money from a murder, who in their right mind would deposit it?
I love it when the defense attorney, all they have to go on is, oh, you really think my client's that dumb? Yeah. Are we to believe that my client is so stupid to put her murder money in the bank? And that's, of course, exactly what she did, right? And Catherine must be sitting there going, oh, that was a really bad move. Why did I do that? That was such a bad move.
Those are acts of an innocent person, not knowing where the money's coming from. You're not going to put that into a bank account. Did Sigfredo Garcia put any money into his bank account? No. Luis Rivera?
Sigfredo Garcia's money was like blown in 2 weeks, I think. He bought a what was it? Nissan Altima, a Monte Carlo. He put 6 months rent on an apartment up front. Just it was all gone. A motorbike, you know. 99. It was like $3,000. I mean, you know, cheap bike, but it adds up, right?
No. Those are the actions of somebody who's getting their...
Yeah. We've done Chris's cross of Wendy J.C. Ryder quite a few times, actually. I think we've done it at least twice, I think, but it's brilliant. Miss Adelson. This is all about you, right? There's 100 people in this courtroom, probably thousands watching, and it's all about your bad marriage. It's fantastic. Well, maybe you are guilty. Maybe you already know. You already know the truth. You already know. It's fantastic. It's one of the best. It's one of the best classic lawyer things. You know, just there's a certain way to speak when you're cross-examining someone that's very theatrical, right? And he does it really well. I just think he's really cool, really good.
their money from legitimate sources.
Oh, thank you, Cat H. Thank you, Cat H. We love you, True Crime Metrics. You keep it interesting and edgy with a side order of humour. Thank you, Cat H. Very kind comment, Cat H.
So, again, the government has put this chart together. They didn't exactly give their specialist, Mary Hull, all the information, though. Despite having from Facebook and knowing from investigator Isom and Patrick Sanford, Agent Sanford, that she was working at nightclubs, they just presented it to her and go, these are where she worked, no mention of cash. This is what this graph should look like. And these dates are based on the evidence that we have from their evidence and from the testimony of Miss Magbanua. Now, the government, in their closing argument, said, well, Miss Magbanua was not able to answer specific names from work 6 years ago and 4 years ago. Yet at the same time, they're talking out of the other side of their mouth in voir dire saying, well, you know, it's natural. People are going to forget some of the facts. It's okay for Rivera, not okay for Catherine Magbanua. I don't think I need to get in. We know that Luis Rivera has not been in solitary confinement, that he's been in general population. I don't need to get into what it can do to the mind of a person spending 3 years in solitary confinement. Not knowing what day it is, what year it is. Despite this, the government has done a majority of the defensive work in this courtroom by fighting against even the thought that she was working a cash job. Their energy should have been spent investigating it.
What is the overall emotion of Christopher's presentation here? It's not anger, is it? Not the overall emotion. There are pockets of anger, for sure. The overall emotion is... well, what is it? I need to think about it.
They also brought in Mary Hull for another.
But the point is that he's thought about it. This is another good trick, you know. Because he knows that he's putting together a case as best he can with a stack of evidence that shows that she's guilty. He knows that. He's under no illusion that she's... believing that she's actually innocent. He's probably done his best to convince himself that that's what he's doing, because that helps his act, right? There's no way that he believes Catherine to be innocent. He's doing the best he can with not much, right? And he does a pretty good job considering how little he's got to work with. Yeah, on the subject of what emotion is the overall, I haven't decided, but he has decided. And that is the stitching that maintains the continuity of his presentation. And that is so important. You know, oftentimes a defense attorney will get up there for closing and forget which emotion. Daniel Rashbaum didn't know what fucking emotion stitched the whole thing together. And it was a mess. It was a fucking mess. Okay? I really don't think he cared. You know, it wasn't where he was at. But that's a really good lesson to take home, I think. You got to remember the overall emotion. There could be pockets of anger, pockets of righteous indignation, pockets of whatever, shock, appeal, whatever it is. But there's one that you have to maintain as your focal, arching emotion. And whatever it is, He knows what it is. Let's try and spot what it is.
Thing. Now, Mary Hull was brought in. She was given limited information for her expert opinion. She got up on the stand and she talked about the yearly totals. Now, the whole point of this, and it's obvious to all of us, was to say, look at 2013 and then look at 2014. She didn't explain what those dashes are. It was just presented to you. Look at the spike. Painting those circles, bolder and bolder. It wasn't until she was on cross-examination with me that I brought out what I already knew. You don't have records, although you could have gotten them. You don't have records for half the beginning of the year. Nor do you have it in 2016 for the remaining half. Her response was, well, that's why I put the dashes there. How are we supposed to know what that means? She's the expert. She should have explained to you. You can't compare 2013 to 2014 because you want to know what? We only have half the year.
She was arrested in August, wasn't she?
Late 2013 is when Catherine starts working, doing brand promotion. This government wants to fault the young mother for working multiple jobs, trying to do anything she can, even if it means taking money from Mr. Garcia that may not be from honest places, but not knowing where it's coming from for the support of her children. Go next to Ms. Magbanua's breast surgery. There is zero evidence, zero, that it was paid for from the proceeds of a homicide. Ms. Magbanua explained to you she's wanted to have it for a very long time. She's given birth to 2 children. It's something that she's wanted to do. And the government gets up here and almost makes a mockery of it, trying to play on words in between tips and her surgery. It's inappropriate in a first-degree murder trial. Going back to Investigator Yao, Sergeant Corbett, Jason Newland, and talking about how you objectively view something. You see those medical records, okay.
You think he's lacking in enthusiasm, Winona? Really? Well, what do you mean by enthusiasm? Enthusiastic. Yeah, well, intense and eager enjoyment, interest, or approval. Well, he's not here to enjoy. He should be interested, and he's not here to approve. I don't know if enthusiasm would be a well-placed, attribute for him to have in this situation.
The cash payment, there's debit card payments. What would Sean Yao say? Say, it fits that, it fits that. Sergeant Corbett, same thing. But they didn't. They came in here and said, this is evidence that she was involved. Mind you, the whole time knowing that she's working a cash job and just completely disregarding that.
One thing he likes to do is question the competencies of those putting the case against her. The prosecutors, the financial analyst. She just put dashes here. How are we to know what that means? She should have explained that to you. We can't compare it to the previous year because she didn't have the numbers for the previous year. She didn't do her job. Which is good. You definitely want to, you have to question the competencies of those making the case against your client. If you don't, and I don't think Dan Rashbaum did that much, did he? He was actually complimentary to the police and the prosecutors. We have great respect for the police. You know, he thought that was the best tactic. He was not a good lawyer at all. Oh, thank you, Tracy L. Hello, love your work and humor. Well, I love your comments. Thank you, Tracy L.
Next. The car. You know, it's interesting. They brought out how Miss Magbanua was arrested in that vehicle. Meaning they had the opportunity to take photos of it. They had the opportunity to get the mileage, the condition, all of that. But no, they wanted to present before a jury, she's driving around in the Adelson's car. Because it makes that target so much more bold, so much more bright. They didn't investigate further into it, nor did they ever look at it objectively, because if you look at it objectively, you have a title for a purchase of a vehicle. Objectively viewed, that's somebody who has purchased a vehicle.
Yeah.
At the end, all you can take from that is that she bought a old, I'm not saying it's not a nice car. Many of us would love to have that. But in comparison to the wealth of the Adelsons, who they've said are these multi-millionaires, a 14-year-old Lexus with 160,000 miles is barely payment for helping commit a murder. What it is...
That's a good point, Amy. Amy says he's trying to invoke the emotion of anger and a sense of justice. He's trying to put the onus on the jury to rescue Magbanua from the power of the evil state. Right. I mean, obviously, it's a fucking closing argument for a defense counsel. Of course, that's what he's doing. But it's not always as clear. It certainly wasn't clear with Dan Rashbaum. And when we see Mr. Hand Grenade get up here in a few moments, well, maybe in an hour, yeah, that's not going to be that great either. But I actually like Mr. Hand Grenade better than Rashbaum. I think he's a better lawyer, to be honest.
It's a friend, an ex-girlfriend, buying an old used car from an ex-boyfriend. But they've submitted to you as proof. That's not objective. As proof of guilt. Let's common sense look at this right now. All right? Catherine's innocent, but let's imagine for a second that they have this agreement. How foolish is it to then create this legal paper trail to this person? That's not how that works. That's not how somebody, if you're committing a crime of that magnitude, you do not want to have any connections. Let's go to the paychecks now. The Adelson Institute. Submitted to you money from the Adelsons, and she didn't work there. Again, painting that target. Along the same lines of common sense and how it'd be foolish, again, you're creating a paper trail, employment records, tax documents. That would be a crazy thing to do if you want to distance yourself from somebody, should anybody ever get investigated or arrested in the future. Now, it was presented over to Mary Hull. She came back and she did this diagram of paychecks. And almost like reading tea leaves, the government is trying to say, this is evidence of guilt. And Mary Hull got...
That's good. That's good. Almost like reading tea leaves, you know. It's divination. It's just useless, mystic shit. Almost like reading tea leaves. You know, what a way to undermine the validity of their approach. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're guessing. They're putting tea leaves in a cup.
Up there and goes, well, these checks are written before the date of work. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Every single one of these checks, but for one or two that was cashed a few days early, were deposited by Miss Magbanua after the dates of work. They didn't do anything to establish Donna Adelson's check writing practices. They had Erica Johnson and Clarice Labredo on the stand and didn't get into that topic. They didn't have Mary Hull evaluate the check writing practices for the other employees, but instead they want to read the tea leaves and say, that's evidence of a murder. It went further, though. You would think, and we're still on the topic of the Adelson Institute, you would think, you help a family commit this murder that they've wanted so bad, you're going to get some dental work on the house. They brought in text messages. We're in a first-degree murder trial trying to interpret text messages for guilt. They submitted to you one where she got whitening gel from Charles Adelson. But they didn't give you, again, we had to bring it in and show it to you. How? Months after the murder, she's paying the Adelson Institute $206.50, and we know from the text messages around that same time that it was because Catherine Magbanua went there for work. Now the government tried to differentiate and go, wait a second, it's clear she saw Harvey Adelson. Yeah, his son, I'm pretty sure, could get a discount from Dad for the person that helped commit a murder, if any of that were true. But the text messages went even further. These checks, and we know it from the government's exhibit, these checks began September 15th. Text messages between Catherine Magbanua and Charles Adelson at that exact, the day before. I'll let you know on my availability so you can know more or less how many hours I can dedicate. Thank you again. They tried to introduce text messages, say, well, that's about wisdom teeth. I had my wisdom teeth taken out. I don't ever remember communicating with my dentist saying, I'll let you know how many hours I can dedicate in my availability. That's a text message about work. But they are so blind to this that they won't accept it. Because in their mind, from the very beginning, Catherine is guilty, and they will only ever look at her through dirty windows. The government argued that, well, there was no evidence. They've said that a lot. Well, there's no evidence of it, so it must not be true. During the, and I almost called it investigation, but it wasn't, because no investigative work was done. Investigator Isom knew that her job was to communicate with patients, came out on the stand. Nothing was done. On the wiretaps, on call RR and E, these are two calls from the wiretaps in 2016, they're talking about her calling patients. But again, the government is still trying to defend against it and say, whoa, 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 she was never at the location. And why would the Adelson Institute be paying for Charles Adelson? They're trying to split hairs. They're trying to divert the attention away from the fact she was working for him. That was earned money. Call E talks about work as well, too.
Just at the end of hour one, guys, I think we're going to mix it up a bit and play the latest wiretap call that we uploaded today and just break that down a little bit because it's fucking hilarious, right? It's between Katie and Charlie, and they're discussing some threatening texts that Donna has received from the undercover, and they're both aware that the FBI could be listening, and they're trying to, plan how to deal with this. without incriminating themselves, and it's just so funny. But before we go to that, let's just say if you would like to support the channel, if you would like to support Fabulous Metrix, you can do at buymeacoffee.com/True Crime Metrix, which is a great way to support the channel. Also, super chat, super like, super thanks, super sticker, super subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. We've got merch links down in the description for the video, Buy Me a Coffee links down in the description for the video, and Discord. We've just had some new members join Discord recently, and it's building. There's stuff happening in there all the time. It's free, it's safe, it's exclusive, it's invitation only, and you're invited. And there's no drama. There's no rules. There are no rules, because everybody just gets along. It's very, very nice. You should come and join Discord. If you like chatting on the live streams, you would like chatting in Discord, I'm sure. Lots of stuff happens in there. Yeah, and please do consider supporting the channel on buymeacoffee.com/True Crime Metrix. What time code are we at? 32:25. So we'll go to this video. We'll come back to Christopher in a few moments.
Hey.
What's up?
Not much. How's your day going?
Fucking crazy. My ear was ringing like hell.
Yeah, it sucks.
I have a lot of shit to do, but now I'm rushing to go get my kids.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Is there any way, like if someone wanted to get someone's cell phone number, like say my mom's cell phone,
yeah,
is there any way someone could look up through like AT&T? What's that?
If it's listed, yeah, you can look up anybody's phone number.
How do you look up?
Like you just go online. Like I could do like a backtrack of like phone numbers. Sometimes even like when I'm trying to call like a out of state number or whatever, like you could just look it up online, and sometimes it shows you the person who it is.
So you can look up, like if you wanted to look up Donna Adelson, you can look up her number.
Yeah, it's like for example, like mine says Sprint, but mine says through my brothers. You get me?
Yeah, Charlie. There's this thing called the phone book. Right? It's like this big book with all the numbers in it when they're listed, and all the numbers are in there. You just, if it's Donna Adelson, it's probably under D or under A. It's one of the two.
Like I'm in a family plan with my brother, so he would. I don't know if I look up my number, like if it'll say my name, or it'll be listed under his name because I'm under his plan. So if your mom has her own number on her own plan, then you can get it.
Wobble plan.
I don't think it's that easy all the time. If I really wanted to, I can get somebody's number.
Okay, because it's crazy, and I don't know, and this is the one thing that's weird. It's like I don't know. I mean, if you're even the right Katie or whatever the fuck they're.
I don't know if you're the right Katie, It could be you, Katie, or another Katie. And he starts going on in a minute about how he never called her Katie. I always called you Catherine, which is just such bullshit.
Talking about. But somebody sent my mom a text message at 2:00 in the morning on Wednesday morning, saying that you don't think I'm for real. You have some puta. I don't know what puta's what, like pussy. Have some puta call me up and threaten me. You have Katie's baby daddy puta call me up and threaten me. You don't think I'm for real after what was done for you? Like, fucking crazy.
But why? That's the thing. You can't just call somebody like.
And the person.
How is your mom's number listed?
I don't know. I don't know.
Her own line? Does she have it through like with your dad? Does she have it through you?
I'm going to ask her. So I don't know. What I'm.
For somebody to be calling your mom.
Well, they texted her.
I mean to text it. The text is
and
the same number?
that same number, that same person is fucking texting my mom, calling whoever called her, I guess whoever called him, who they're claiming is your baby daddy, calling him a puta, and saying like, so obviously whoever it is knows, or they think they know a lot of things. And I don't know anything. So I don't know. I'm very lost. Very, 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 very.
Did you catch that? Whoever it is knows. Well, they think they know a lot of things. I mean, I don't know anything. So, what was he gonna say? Whoever it is knows that thing that we did.
Claiming is your baby daddy, calling him a puta, and saying like, so obviously whoever it is knows, or they think they know a lot of things. And I don't know anything. So I don't know. I'm very lost. Very, very.
He was obviously going to say whoever it is knows something, but if he said it like that, that would imply that he knew that there was something to know, right? But he's just so bad at backtracking. It's unbelievably bad. It's just he catches himself too late, and then the saves he puts in place do nothing but draw attention to the fact that he realized he needed to save himself from saying something incriminating. So it's just like this big light on a lie, It's so unbelievably bad.
Very, very, very lost as to who's fucking like harassing and trying to like basically extort.
Yeah, but like for somebody to be
Extortion plan. Put him on the plan. Put him on the wobble plan. Wobbling plan. Extortion plan.
like you see, like for
From
the number that they're calling just becomes weird. Remember, I tried to do you a favor of like, because somebody's harassing your family. Of course, I don't want something to happen to your family. And
well,
shit.
yeah, and the thing is this: they're
Hey! Before I lose it in the deep dark hole that is the Metrix chat. Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you so much, Molly, for the fabulous super chats, and thank you, Amy, for gifting 5 wonderful True Crime Metrix memberships to Ben, Aaron, Gwen, Glass Girl, Marcy, and Seagate 1. Welcome, Seagate 1. Thank you, guys, and very, very good job, guys.
talking about. The only reason I even bothered calling you is because they referenced you, and that's
that's the only reason. Otherwise, why would I call you? Because it's not like we planned a murder, right?
why, and I don't know what your friend said or.
What did the whole text message say? Like, what is?
It said, so I guess you don't take me seriously. You have some puta. Give me a call. Katie's baby daddy. It referenced you in the if you're the correct Katie. I mean, I always know you as Catherine.
But they're saying they're saying that it's.
If you're the correct Katie, right? Because I always knew you as Catherine. Yeah, I'm sure, right? Yeah, I'm sure he's phoning like her up at the dental office at Sophie Dental, going, "Could I speak to Catherine, please? I would like to invite Catherine to dinner at the Icon with my parents. We're having Maine lobster and we have a private paella chef."
My baby daddy that's calling?
Yep. We called him a puta and said it was your baby daddy calling, and that you don't take me serious. And like after what was done for you, I'm like, what the fuck is like, they're basically like alluding.
I don't know, because it's like, this is what like pisses me off about it, because it's like you can't like, to get numbers and a lot of information. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of like, like thinking
A lot
out.
of like, yeah, no,
You get me? It's not like some person out the street that could just do it. So now that's what worries me.
I agree, and they're coming up with
too much time. And it's like to text somebody, like that's
People are crazy.
to extreme, don't you think? It's like,
Yeah, it's when they're sending a text. The crazy thing is the number wasn't blocked. So
yeah, so it's like I don't even give a shit anymore. You can call me back. This is my number.
yeah, like it's not like to not block a number. I mean, it's really one of two scenarios coming at you. And I said, like, I told my parents, I said, go straight to the FBI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the only people who are going to be.
Go straight to the FBI. Wink. Yeah, we need to report this to the police. Wink. Yeah, I mean, let's try and walk around the mind of Charlie Adelson for a minute, okay? The bump has happened. The paper has been handed with a picture of Dan Markel, a phone number, and an amount of cash. The amount of cash is $5,000, right? That was it, I think. That was all that was on the paper. And then, of course, there was the verbal exchange of, I was with Taco up in Broward, and he told me everything. We helped you with your family problem up north. Take care of Taco, man. Take care of Taco like you've been taking care of Katie and Tudo, man. This ain't going away. This ain't going away. So, like, there's what's really in Charlie's mind, and then there's how he has to act on the phone in case it is the police. He thinks it might be the police, but in Charlie's real mind, he also thinks it might be a connection of Katie and the baby daddy and the Latin King or whatever. But in the version that he's keeping to portray to police, which is that he didn't hire Katie to hire her baby daddy to kill Markel, why would he even be questioning her, like thinking it could be a friend of hers? It does not make sense. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. Not one bit. Right? It's very awkward. I mean, I can't believe they're doing any of this on the phone. And okay, they met up in Dolce Vita and the cops were there also. I mean, you gotta, what I would do is like meet up inside a car, don't even talk because of parabolics or whatever, write things down like you used to do in school, pass notes, right? You used to have whole conversations like that, and you go, well, the notes that could be evidence. Well, you burn the fucking notes immediately. You fold them all up and you burn them immediately. Ashes don't tell the truth. Just make sure you burn the entire pad of paper, because you always see those people like doing a rub. You just rub a pencil and then you see what was written on the page that you ripped out, right? From the imprint, from the pressure. You got to burn the whole pad. But if you do that, I mean, that's the best way to do it. Then you can just be open. You don't have to worry about anyone recording you. It might take you a few extra minutes, but you'll be safe.
Be able to, fuck, they'll knock on doors in a second. I mean, my only thing is that I also, I'm from a different school. I mean, someone steals my jet ski. Listen, if I see him do it, I'm going to call the police.
yeah.
Otherwise, like, I don't even want the person to get caught.
You don't want to deal with shit, yeah. I get it.
I got enough going on in my life.
That boggles my mind. It's just there's too much. It's like somebody's reeling in a fish and trying to see who's trying,
Well,
like,
I mean, but the problem is too, they're fucking scaring an old lady, which is not hard to do.
Exactly.
Go scare old people. And the thing is this: it's like when my jet ski was stolen. All right. To tell you the truth, I didn't want the person to get caught, and it's not because I knew the person. It's the last
You
thing
don't
on
want
the
to
planet.
deal with a fucking person that's gonna. Yeah, I get what you mean.
I mean, like the last.
It's the same thing if somebody vandalizes your car or something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like if you vandalize, like if you steal my jet ski, it's grand theft. Actually, it's like grand theft auto, but it's actually grand theft twice because the trailer is over $1,000. Yeah. So when
I don't know if it'd be grand theft auto. It'd be grand larceny, maybe, wouldn't it? Is it grand theft auto if it's a jet ski? It'd be grand theft marine.
Hear me out. When my jet ski got stolen, you got the trailer that has a title to it, and you have the jet ski that has a title to it. The jet ski was the jet ski was worth $13,000. My trailer was worth like $1,200. I had to pay the fucking deductible of like $500. My trailer wasn't insured. Like I was pissed, and I got money. I got some money back for the ski. I got nothing back for the trailer. I was fucking pissed about the whole thing. But the last thing I want is to send some idiot to jail who then knows exactly where I live. So one of his homeboys or his cousin or his brother or God knows who what.
Yeah, you're going to have something that's a never-ending story.
Yeah, so when I have someone who steals my stupid fucking jet ski and they get grand theft, and let's say they already have a record, so the fucking bricks come down on them, and they get 6 years for grand theft, and it's their third offense, so they're getting 6 years in jail. Meanwhile, guess who they want to go get back? The fucking guy on Whale Harbor.
I don't know. It seems so weird. Like trust me. Like I've tried to, think of every scenario possible, and I'm trying to help you out the best that I can. That's why, I try to do you a favor and even try to figure out who the fuck is harassing your parents because I don't like that.
Yeah, no, and I listen. The fact that
Katie's only helping because she loves people's parents.
The fact that I even
calling your mom.
And listen, the fact that I even called you up about it, I'm going to feel really stupid if it's the wrong person, because they never gave me a last name. And I always knew it was Catherine more than anything, but they never gave me a last. Had they given me a last name, I'd be like, dude, it's you they're talking about. So I'm saying that the reference, your nickname, if they gave me your last name, it would be a different fucking story. Yeah. And I feel like an idiot for involving you with some idiot that's trying to extort money from my fucking family.
Of course.
And they're coming at them with details that I've never heard before, that they've never heard before. And fuck, if it was me, I'd go to the police.
Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, I'd tell them to go to the FBI.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating, and they're coming up with details, which makes you even more scared, because it's like, do these people have anything to do with the fucking craziness that happened? Like, and if they did, a part of me would tell them, don't go to the police, because if these people are capable of that, you don't want to fuck with them at all. Like, if these people, like, are these the people that did it? And then they're coming after you. Like, I just want my parents fucking left alone. But it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
And you never know. I mean, if these people had anything to do with it, I want them to steer clear of who these idiots are.
Yeah, Amy. Doesn't this go against the whole Katie extorted me theory? Yeah. I'm surprised this wasn't played in his trial. Was it? Did I miss that? I didn't hear that. As far as I know, this is like brand new. It was referred to. Some of it was referred to. I remember Georgia talking about him not reporting the jet ski and so on in her cross of Charlie. But yeah. No, this was me telling Katie that I'm not setting you up. And the only reason we're not saying the facts is because Katie made me promise never to talk about it again. And then she pretended to not know what we were never going to talk about again. And that was all so I could tell her I'm not setting you up. And he was like, yeah, that Tallahassee jury. Dan made it for a 5th grade level. He should have made it for a 3 grade level or a 1 grade level. They don't listen. They have big monkey elephant feet.
Because who knows if they're going to get hurt. And listen, I'll tell you a secret. Police can't protect you. I mean, unless they're going to put a fucking...
Yeah, exactly. That's
if
why
somebody...
I don't trust them. That's why...
Well, no, I don't... Listen, the cops talk a big game. You know what? Well, let me tell you something.
Well, this is good. This is good.
My brother-in-law, my ex-brother-in-law, had death threats against him. So he was getting...
He made that bit really audible, right? Because what Charlie is really hoping for, the best case scenario for Charlie here, you know what the best case scenario for Charlie is? What he's hoping for is that it is the cops, but it's a fishing mission, right? That they haven't got evidence, that they don't know it was him. They're checking if it was him. They're seeing if he says anything incriminating. And now he's throwing this big question mark, and going, yeah, my ex-brother-in-law, he actually had death threats. There were death threats made against my brother-in-law, and the police didn't protect him. Yeah, someone was making death threats against Professor Markel. He's really pushing that line. He's hoping the cops going, well, if it were Charlie, he probably would have said something by now. And apparently there were death threats, so we better go and look into that.
Death threats. And then next thing you know, he gets killed.
Yeah.
So, the police can't protect you 24/7. And on the other side, who's ever doing this, if they did have something to do with anything, I'd be afraid to put anyone in jail who knows who I am.
Yeah.
Because it's the same. It's kind of like the same feeling I have with my jet ski. Like if I know who did it, yeah.
And this is a nice thing he's come up with to, because he's aware that he may be dialoguing directly with the FBI right now, right? So he wants to get in a reason why he's not going to law enforcement to report this thing, right? Obviously, the reason can't be that he doesn't want the FBI to be snooping around him. That can't be the reason. The reason has to be, I don't want to get anyone sent away, because if they have a brother in Broward, then that brother could come down from Broward and put a bullet in my head.
I would bring it to the police. But if it's just nonsense, you just want to live your life and they live their life and leave me the fuck alone. I don't, honestly, in my heart of hearts, whoever stole my jet ski, I hope they get what they deserve, but I don't want them to think that I ruined their life and I have to come home at night to my house and worry that the guy who stole my jet ski gets caught, and then someone wants to give me payback because I'm the one who put a guy in jail for 6 years for grand theft on a stupid fucking jet ski. What?
Things that are not worth it. Yeah, I know.
I got enough going on in my life. If the police catch him, great. I'm not running out in the street after anyone. If I saw him, I would call the police, but I'm not hoping, honestly, I hope to God the guy doesn't get caught, because I don't want them to know where I live. I don't want them to think I had anything to do with it. I'm one of these people that just stick to my own business. I don't mess with people. I also don't want people messing with my family. But the only flip side is these people sound really serious, and they're...
And now he's saying to Katie, listen, I want you to deal with this, okay? I don't want to call the police. You take care of it. Make him go away. Please make him go away.
They sound serious. They don't sound like they're going away. And they sound like they know.
You say a lot of things sometimes, and it's hard for me to grasp it so I can help you.
Yeah, so, and the thing is this: these people are coming out. They're talking about stuff that it makes me think they may have had something you know, they're either making shit up, or they may have had something to do with something.
They may have had something to do with something, whatever that something might have been, which we don't know.
I don't know, bro. You're just telling me a lot of information that I don't even fucking know. And
I know.
Here, there's a bunch of kids out here, and I don't even know how to get my kids because I've never gotten them at this time.
Oh,
I guess it's released right now. Yeah.
She's waiting to pick up her kids.
do you see what they're dealing with?
Huh?
I mean, it's like, you know, my dad wants to go to the FBI. My mom wants these people just to go away so she could get a night's sleep. And, you know, I just wish I had fucking information that I could collect a reward if there's a fucking fat reward out there.
Oh, if only I had the information about what happened to Professor Markel. Then I could get that fat reward. Would they really give the reward to someone so close to the murder? His nephew's dad is the murder victim. Right, I want the reward. I want that fat reward. Here's the information that I don't have.
So anyway, that's my day. Besides that, it's fucking beautiful outside. Can you hear me?
Oh, it's just funny. Okay, so where is our... Yeah. I'm going to go and get the link for Cristopher DeCoste. I'll just be a second. Where is the link for Cristopher DeCoste? Aha!
Is still trying to defend against it and say, whoa, she was never at the location. And why would the Adelson Institute be paying for Charles Adelson? They're trying to split hairs. They're trying to divert the attention away from the fact she was working for him. That was earned money. Call E talks about work as well, too.
Yeah, we got a bunch more wiretap calls coming out soon, guys. So if that's funny to you, like it is to me, subscribe to the channel and keep ring that bell for the notifications, because we got a bunch more coming out, more every day. Adelson month. We love Adelson month, right? It's the best month.
Back on the call activity, the government brought up the fact that there was a phone call to one of Luis Rivera's old phone numbers, but that's not what the evidence showed. Rivera was on the stand and he said his number was 934-6615. Agent Sanford was put on the stand by the government, and on cross, not on direct, on cross-examination, it was brought out that the phone number that he got in review and the phone number that he had in his report, again, this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I don't think that they're used to hearing no when they want things. That they have the number of 935-6615. The government still wants to be able to argue and say, well, you know, it's close, it's evidence. No subpoena was ever sent to find out who either of those phone numbers belonged to. It'd be very easy for Luis Rivera, looking at the call records, which he would have in discovery, and just making things up. But we'll get into that a little bit more later. The car rental in June. Now, we talked a little bit about cell phone activity. Now, they put a map up there, and they've got a dot right near the car rental place. But what they're not showing you, is all the other businesses. All those little squares that are in there, those are city blocks. This is miles and miles and miles of territory. There are major highways in there. There's an airport, Miami International Airport, a massive airport, right there. They never showed you any other days. June 3rd, June 9th. Now, that's their expert. He does the plotting for that. It was easy for me to go in and look at the call records and say, look, on this random day of May, it's the same activity. They're picking bits and pieces to put together this tapestry of the guilt. What they're not doing is looking at any of it objectively. Now, this wasn't enough evidence for them. Admittedly, they didn't have enough. But they were still desperate. They still needed to move forward on the case. So in 2016, they tried to create some more to get bolder circles. They did the wiretaps. They did the bump, and they also had the wiretaps. Now, these wiretaps, and it's part of this stack here. Again, this is everything. We've already gone through most of this stuff. For months, they listened to her phone calls. Secretly listening to her phone calls, talking to people that they believe she was involved in this conspiracy with. Hundreds of calls, hundreds of texts. Not one thing, not one thing of her being involved in this murder. Only her needing to know less. Now,
absolutely, Udi. Udi says that he would let Sigfredo, Katie, and Taco go for Wendy. She has a premeditated mindset that is more terrifying than all three. Absolutely. And you know what? I think possibly Ruth and Phil Markel would be okay with that as well. You know? Wendy is... That's the one that really needs the most justice. Yeah? Yeah.
The fact that Charles Adelson and Catherine Magbanua were communicating, it wasn't irregular. We brought that out on the stand, that before the bump, before anybody may think, hey, we might be getting listened to, that Charles Adelson and Catherine Magbanua...
I should hope that the boys would move to Toronto with the Markels and take back the family name.
And we're still communicating. So it wasn't just out of the blue, this bump happens, and all of a sudden there's phone calls. Now, the way the bump was done dictated the actions that then followed. It was controlled. The undercover, and you'll be able to watch it again if you need to, reference son, reference Catherine twice, and reference Tuta. Now, the letter that was handed, we have to take the FBI's word for what was actually written on there, and whether there were not other instructions. How is it that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, with all of their resources, infinite, doesn't have a copy of the letter that was handed for this huge operation? Now, this goes back to what I was saying before. It's easier to hide things than it is to create them. Meaning that if it's just, hey, we don't have a photo of it, if it surfaces years later, to be like, oh yeah, that's what was in there. We have no idea of knowing what was written on there and how that then dictated the actions that then followed. But the government wants you to take it as evidence of guilt. Now, again, there's nothing in there talking about Catherine being involved in any of this, but they want to interpret action and inaction, what somebody would do, as if there's standard protocol for such a situation. The response from Agent Sanford as to why there was not a copy of it, it slipped their minds. Now, had the bump been uncontrolled, had it been that they just handed the piece of paper, $5,000, and then you had that communication, that would be evidence of something. But they didn't do that. Now ask yourself why they didn't do that. They didn't do it because the hope was to create communication to paint those targets more. The proper thing to do, the objective thing to do, hand that flyer and see what happens. Plant that seed and see what happens. Whatever they say, tickle the wire and see what happens. Not give instructions on what to do. I submit to you that
He's got a good point. What did the FBI bump gain from saying Katie's name? He did say Katie's name, right? We helped you with this family problem up north. We're going to have to... We should watch the bump, right?
was being used in those communications by Charles Adelson, who, as Catherine said, definitely involved. Now, she's saying that not because she has information about it, but she's seen what all of you have seen during this trial. Again, you want to charge him, charge him. In the first 3 phone calls, and we know this from Agent Sanford, that Charles Adelson says to Don Adelson, don't talk in the apartment. Now, it's easy to understand what that meant. Don't say anything that's going to get us in trouble. Now, the government talks about WhatsApp and how people can be communicating from WhatsApp when it helps their theory, but when it doesn't and it explains things, disregard them. Donna Adelson assumed that the ex-girlfriend was the most recent ex-girlfriend. Look, if I say to my mother, my ex-girlfriend, she's not going to think, well, is it one from, high school, or is it the last one? It's natural. That's a natural thing that a mother would do. But there's additional communications, there's additional meetings. Charles is not sure. Eventually, learns that Catherine's name was mentioned. But in that first...
We're going to watch the bump.
Condominium toward the street.
All right, please proceed.
Okay, bud.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen.
You're scared.
No, don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Luto for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your...
That's nice to know, Cosmic Kitten. Every time I light a cigarette, you grab a strawberry. I love strawberries. Who doesn't?
Friend Luto for quite some time. Hey. Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen.
You're scared.
No, don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Luto.
Okay, so there it is. We know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Tudo with this family problem you had up north. Now, was that necessary? I suppose it was. Right? If he didn't say that, it would look a lot more like someone just guessing, right? Reading suspicion in a newspaper or seeing a podcast and trying his luck to get $5,000. The Adelsons wouldn't have had so much panic if this guy didn't present that he knew Katie's name. You can get a picture of Dan Markel. You can find Donna Adelson's cell number. You can demand money. You can make up a story about, we helped your family with this problem up north. you know, you could get enough information from media to do that, but knowing to say Katie's name, because they know that the Adelsons know that Katie was involved, was needed, I believe. So Cristopher DeCoste's contention that they shouldn't have done that. You should see what happens. You don't tell them what to do. It's not a fair test. They told them to contact Katie, so that's why they contacted Katie. Not because Katie was involved, because they said Katie. They painted those circles, bolder and bolder, brighter and brighter, you know? So, again, Cristopher DeCoste does have a good knack at making a bullshit argument sound very convincing. And unless, you know, you go back and look at the bump like we just did and learn that he had no argument. Okay, we might as well finish the bump because it's funny.
Time after your problem up north has been resolved, and I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north, and we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times, and we want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through the way you're taking care of Katie and Tuco. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
Oh, so funny. Look at her there. Just in total fucking panic. Oh, it's classic. Udi, what am I smoking? It's just tobacco. It's Pueblo tobacco. So back to Chris.
Girlfriend. Look, if I say to my mother, my ex-girlfriend, she's not going to think, well, is it one from, high school, or is it the last one? It's natural. That's a natural thing that a mother would do. But there's additional communications, there's additional meetings. Charles is not sure. Eventually, learns that Catherine's name was mentioned. But in that first phone call with Catherine, if they are involved in this conspiracy to commit murder, to be like, look, somebody came up, there would be talk about it, but there would also be, don't say anything. Nowhere in any of those wiretaps do you ever hear, don't talk in the apartment. Don't do anything that's going to get me in trouble. It's actually the opposite of that. And we'll get into that in a minute. Now, let's get a little bit more into the action. I can't say why Charles Adelson did what he did. But certain things make sense. Our theory is that him and Sigfredo Garcia had an agreement. Now, the government wants to say that it was through Catherine Magbanua. Our position is it was about Catherine Magbanua. Now, when that happens, the bump happens, Charles Adelson can't call over to Sigfredo Garcia. You don't know. Is he already working with the police? If I contact him, I'm going to get in trouble. I've got to distance it. Catherine, the bump gave him the idea to use Catherine as a buffer. Find out who it is. Call that number. Think about this. He believes, or he's involved in this conspiracy with Catherine, and he's thinking, hey, it could be the FBI, it could be the cops. That he would say, hey, I want you to call that number, knowing that she could say something wrong, she could do something wrong to incriminate him. The reason why he was so confident with having her call is because he knew she didn't know anything. Now, let's talk about the flow of knowledge. Colonel, let me know if you need to slide this back for you. Now, the bump happens with Don Anderson. Happens here. Conveys the information over to Charles Adelson. That information then goes to Katie Magbanua, and we know that that information then goes over to Sigfredo Garcia. But when Catherine wants to know, what is this about? The answer is, the less you know, the better. There's no information flowing in between there. Now, from Agent Sanford, well, it was Investigator Dillmore talked about the fact how there was communication in between Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. Luis Rivera was in federal custody, and he was contacting a friend to send text messages to certain people. Luis Rivera identified that on the stand. Investigator Dillmore, in reviewing Sigfredo Garcia's phone, saw that there were communications with T, talking about Luis Rivera. So, the flow of information from the bump made it around the horn. One would think that if this is a conspiracy, the information is then going to flow back. But it didn't. Agent Sanford said how there was a point where Charles Adelson was sure it was the cops. And then he tells Catherine. If it were set up in the way that they think it was, that information would have flown back, and Catherine would have been the one telling him. Who told Charles Adelson? Turn out to go to you. Can't understand any of it. Much of it. Catherine got on the stand. She could have lied. Said, well, this is what was being said. That was being said. You can't understand it. This is what was being said. That was being said. Instead, she said, look, I don't remember. To her, that wasn't a conversation about a conspiracy of the murder of his brother-in-law. It was just another day sitting down with Charles where he's talking about how his family is getting harassed and how her name had been put into it. She did tell you, I didn't discuss a murder with him. And the government showed a clip of it and tried to say, well, he had that paper. You all saw it. He had that paper, if it even was the same one, and had it in his lap. Never showed it to her. The very little portions that you can make out of it, what it is Charles giving hypotheticals of what Catherine should do and say to scare off the person. And he's mostly describing himself. Be afraid of me, because I may come back, I may do something. But it was like all the other times for Charles, it was just him talking and talking and talking. Now the government brought out...
Welcome back, Brian. Thank you for hitting the like button, my friend. Remember to click the like button, everybody.
The fact that the cops weren't contacted. We covered this a lot on cross-examination. Catherine wasn't bumped, or harassed, or called, or texted. It wasn't her place. It wasn't her place to be calling the police because it wasn't directly against her. And we see this more in Call DD. Quote, I'm trying to get whoever is threatening your family and helping you guys out. These are not the communications somebody's going to be having if they're involved in a conspiracy to commit murder. Those aren't the communications that are going to be had. Now, they'll come back and they'll say, well, it's code or... No, that's hogwash. These are not the communications that you're going to have. And they say, well, nobody went to the cops. It was Catherine the one. Catherine stuck in the middle. Stuck in the middle, not getting any information from Sigfredo, not getting any information, well, finding out things later on from Charles Adelson, who's getting frustrated. Why is my name being mentioned? And she's the one that says, I'm about to go, and she hates that she swore. And we even see it from her text messages. She won't even spell out swear words. The effing FBI.
The effing FBI. The mother effing FB mother F.
If she were involved in this conspiracy, thinking, well, it's either the Latin Kings or whoever did this, or it's the FBI, those words, I'm about to go to the FBI, and the way that she said it, which was not a, I'm thinking about doing it, it's, I am about to go to them myself. Those words would have never come out of her mouth. Even at that point, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough evidence. The only remaining piece of evidence, the only thing, which brings us to our second topic, this guy right here. Luis Rivera. Second topic, Luis Rivera, outright dismissal of the problems with his story. Not the facts, with his story. We had approximately 40 witnesses testify during this trial, maybe a little bit more, maybe a few less. He is the only one. The only one. Mary Hall is not a witness to events. Chris Corbett is not a witness to events. The only one is Luis Rivera. Now, the consensus among the Tallahassee Police Department and the FBI is that prior to Rivera, it was not enough to arrest. Now, arresting somebody is a much lower standard than trial. There's a big difference between probable cause to arrest, which you heard about during trial, and beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. Rivera cooperated. Now, had Luis Rivera said Catherine Magbanua's name in August when they were doing this communicating through cans and lines, where Luis Rivera's in the other room with his attorney, and his cattleman's in the other room, if he had said Catherine at that time, she would have been arrested the next day. But it wasn't until he finally realized, I got to give them more. We'll talk about that in a minute. I've got to give them more. Because Luis Rivera couldn't say, well, yeah, Sigfredo Garcia was involved. That wouldn't get him a deal. If he wanted a deal, he had to give them something. He cooperates. The very next day, Catherine is arrested. To convict Catherine Magbanua, Catherine is innocent. She is innocent of all three of these charges. To convict her, you have to believe Luis Rivera, a man who cannot be trusted. His testimony was a convoluted mess, full of contradictions. From that convoluted mess, you can take two things, and only two things that apply to Catherine. Again, I don't doubt that this guy was in Dan Markel's driveway, not for a second. But the information that he gives against Catherine Magbanua, it's only two things. That he heard some phone calls, and then on July 19th, Catherine paid money. Now, the heard calls thing, that's an easy lie. It's an easy lie for him. He has the reports. He has the police reports. And from Agent Sanford, we know that the basics, and from Sergeant Corbett, the basics of the travel, the communication, that was in those reports. And he would have that information. Plus, he knows Sigfredo Garcia's habits of communicating with the mother of his children. Easy, but he failed. He said that on June 4th, on the trip up, that Catherine Magbanua and Sigfredo Garcia were constantly on the phone. The answer to that? To quote Shadrick Nobles, nope. Sergeant Corbett.
Love you, Shadrick.
And he showed you that there was a 29-second...
No. You can't paint that picture. You can't paint that picture. Still trying to paint that picture.
phone call. Throughout that entire time, there was a 29-second phone call. Again, this is Luis Rivera trying to give them something to get that deal. Let's go to 719. Another easy lie. He has the reports. He has the details. The general vicinity of people and places. It's easy for him to build his lies within that framework. But another fail. He said, Catherine called me. Now, he knew that there was phone communication, but he didn't know the specifics. Catherine called me. Again, wrong. Sergeant Corbett got up there and he goes, no. It was Luis Rivera calling her. The government will get up here and probably say this is a minor detail. It's a huge detail, because these are the pieces of evidence that Luis Rivera is giving. And Luis Rivera is the sole witness against her. He also said that he was at the barbershop, over at Ray's barbershop on Biscayne. Wrong. He was in a different municipality. He was over in Miami Beach, and we know that from the record. So how and why? How and why did all of this happen? The guy was looking at the death penalty. The evidence against him strong. The evidence against him strong. He's already doing 12 years. Meanwhile, the government, desperate to do something with their case, and they cut a deal. Now again, he'd get nothing for naming somebody who they already have. Sigfredo Garcia was arrested alongside with Luis Rivera. You're not going to get anything by naming the other guy that's already charged. You've got to name new people. Desperate government, desperate Luis Rivera, they come to a deal where, and Mr. Zenganet got up here and said that it would be about 19 years. No, remember, with gain time, he's only going to do a percentage of that. Do 12, maybe 12 in federal custody. Then there's 7. Maybe he does another 4 or 5 years. For a guy like Luis Rivera, that's just a cost of doing business. That's a cost of being a criminal. That's expected. Now, this whole thing about threats, that, you know, because he snitched, that he's a threat. This guy's been the boss of a gang since he was 15 years old. Different rules apply to him. Clearly they do, because he's in general population and he hasn't been touched. That's why it happened. But how did it happen? Again, I've gone over it, but it's worth going over again one time of how Luis Rivera was able to do this. He has reports that detail things, not to the level that you saw in this trial, but reports laying out the framework of things. He's also got the media. You've seen it during this trial. All over the place. And it's been all over the place. He has TV in jail. He's got friends and family outside. He knew the facts. He knew the theory. That gave him the framework. Now, I'm not trying to say that anybody spoon-fed it to him and said, you got to say this. I don't think that happened. But I think that this guy, the head of a gang at 15 years old, that's a smart guy. Be it either he figured it out himself or somebody told him. That's what he did. But he could only think.
He's doing a great job at bringing down a pretty credible. I don't want to say Luis Rivera is a credible witness. He's a criminal. He got a sweet deal. I mean, there may be many people on the jury think we all think he's a credible witness because we've had so much exposure to this case that we feel assured that he's being truthful about the majority of the things. There's a few inconsistencies, changes, but that could be natural for memory. I mean, the whole thing about did I take a picture of a lion or an owl thing, why does that change? You don't. Lions don't fly or have feathers. Yeah, I don't know what that meant. Where would he have taken a picture of a lion? Was it like a real lion in Tallahassee, or did they go to a zoo, or was it like maybe a graffiti of a lion? Why the owl thing? I could see him in the motel saying, "Man, look outside! There's an owl. There's an owl. Give me a picture, put on Instagram, man." You know, I could see that happening. But a lion? Where is this lion? Did they go to a zoo? So there may be, but we've all had a lot of exposure to the case, so we we feel that Lewis is credible. But how would you feel having just sat on the jury for a few days, a couple of weeks, whatever it was? You may think, well, that guy, we can't trust anything he says. He was the boss of a criminal gang and he got a sweet deal. And he would have done anything to get a deal. So we can't trust his testimony. Cristopher DeCoste knows that, and is spending special attention. And he always does this double-edged sword thing where he's, in outlining Luis Rivera's obvious lack of credibility, he's also shining light on the, as he would say it, desperation of the state, that one of their main key witnesses in the case was this guy. That's really the best you could do. That's the most credible witness that you could have, was this gang thug, because they didn't have anyone else, right? So he's very good at doing two things at once. He's taken down Lewis and also demonstrating that the state is so desperate that they had to use Lewis because they couldn't get anyone more credible. He's very, very good at this. You know, I really like to look at what it is he's doing and try and understand his creative process. Because when he sits down on his own, or with Tariq Awas, or with his other law partners, whatever it is, they develop these strategies and theories and methods of attack. I would love to be in the room, right, watching it develop around a table. It'd be great.
One-dimensional. He couldn't see how this would contradict other things later on because the information he had was limited.
Yeah, he couldn't see. He couldn't see it would contradict things later on. But hey, guys, what time is it? I'm not having any more coffee today. No. But if you want to get us one for tomorrow, you could at buymeacoffee.com/TrueCrimeMetrix. Link in the description, guys. Great way to support the channel. We thank you so much. But also memberships, YouTube memberships. We got super like, super thanks, super sticker. Like, share, leave a comment. Join social networks and join Discord and go to the merch shop. But also buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for the support, guys. Yeah, we're doing a lot of streams at the moment. A lot of streams. Keeping busy.
The direction of the calls, the cell site data, that was done on the stand here. He had the basics of it. But it's when you get into the details that you realize there's no way that he's correct. Now, remember, he knew that.
Lewis was in protective custody, but he was writing to Georgia Kappelman saying, listen, put me in fucking general population. I'm going nuts in this box.
Theory. They want Catherine. But Wendy Adelson was also mentioned all over the place. And he tried. He tried to give them Wendy Adelson. He knew that she was a target. He tried again and he failed. Now, he said that on July 17th, that he saw Wendy Adelson at the house,
Leslie.
and that Sigfredo Garcia said, that's the woman. But his story, and this doesn't happen with the truth, you usually get more of a story at the beginning and then your memory fades over time. But his apparently got better over time. Because his original statement was, I saw Wendy at the house. Then it was with the kids. And then most recently in 2019, it was, I saw Wendy with the kids and they walked into the house on Trescott. Now, we're going to come back to that in a second, but why would Luis Rivera be doing that? Why would his story be so motivated? He may have been on that witness stand But in his mind, he's still at defense counsel table because the government still has him. It's within their power to say whether Luis Rivera has lived up to his end of the deal, whether they want to violate him or not. Now, this whole thing about the violation of probation, Luis Rivera didn't know about that until we told him. They didn't tell him, his attorneys didn't tell him, nobody told him. So there's the additional fact that he needs to make sure that he's not at odds with the state of Florida, because they can still potentially get him for 15 years. Back to July 17th. His story is now he sees the kids walking into the house. It's not possible. Doesn't matter who told him what. He's trying to give up Wendy Adelson because he knows that's going to better his deal. But it's not possible. And we know that, and this is part of the stipulation, that on Thursday, July 17, 2014, the kids were dropped off at 8:30 a.m. at Creative Preschool. What other woman with 2 children would be walking into Dan Markel's house with 2 young boys?
Who said it was 2 young boys? That's never been asked of Lewis. We went through this the other day. That's never been asked, and it should have been. Were they this woman that you saw with 2 kids? Were they boys? How old were they? How old did they look? Were they 3 and 4 or like 8 and 9? You know, I think we Riding Shotgun put out the theory that I think is the front runner for the truth, is that there was a family down the road also living on Trescott or just off Trescott, somewhere walking distance away, that knew Wendy and Dan when they were married, after they were married, had 2 kids around the same age, and they would do family things together, and that quite possibly the woman that Lewis saw was that woman. Not Wendy, but that woman with her own children, who may have been stopping by to Dan Markel's house, and Lewis and Sigfredo mistook that woman for Wendy. I've never heard any good reason why the fuck Wendy would be on Trescott with the kids. Why would that happen? I mean, and I don't know why no one's ever asked if it was 2 boys and how old they were.
It's clearly Luis Rivera trying to lie and give up more people, because the more people... Look, this guy's ruthless. He doesn't care about sending somebody away for his own good. His life is about taking from other people. And he gets a deal by taking from her. He added more to his lie, to his story. You know, I got mad at Sigfredo. And he got on the phone with Catherine, and that happened before noon. But see, that's a problem. Every time he gets too specific, that's when he gets caught in a lie. Because Sergeant Corbett told us there is no phone call. There is no phone call from Sigfredo Garcia to Catherine Magbanua before the afternoon on that day. Now, the government, in their desperation, tried to fix this with Sergeant Corbett on redirect. And they pointed to a call much later in the afternoon to try to make it seem like, well, that's the call. But the problem was that phone call was from Catherine to Sigfredo Garcia, not the other way around. That's defensive work. Guys. There was an additional time that he tried to give up Wendy. On June 5th, he said that, and this is in one of his statements, one of the many different ones, he says that they get up there the next day, that they're following Markel, and that they are Professor Markel, and that they follow him to the Creative Preschool, but then they lose him. Well, we know from Jeffrey Lacass that that's wrong. Because Jeffrey Lacass had a memory of that time frame and said, Wendy had the kids. Professor Markel would not have been dropping off the kids or picking them up that day. Now, there's other minor inconsistencies. The owl. This is an easy one. You know, Luis Rivera spins a lie. He doesn't give a time frame. And he goes, oh, yeah. Then Catherine called. Again, there's normal communication between Catherine Magbanua and Sigfredo Garcia. So it's easy to say this lie. Going back to objectively investigating things, of course, the Tallahassee Police Department, the Leon County State Attorney's Office, the FBI, they sent a subpoena to either, because remember, he said two different things. It was Instagram, Facebook. Minor inconsistency. But the problem here is nobody ever subpoenaed the records from those social media outlets to find out if the guy was telling the truth. They did it for Catherine, they did it for Sigfredo to paint those circles or to try. But they don't do it for him. My belief is they didn't trust him. We dig any deeper on this, it's gonna show that he's lying. We dig any deeper on Catherine Magbanua, it's gonna show she's telling the truth. There was other inconsistencies. When he learned of it, it was either before, it was during.
It's a bold statement he's making, isn't it? I mean, if we look past his confident... sorry, I'm tired. If we look past his arguments, let's say, what he's really saying between the lines is that the government, Georgia Kappelman, is intentionally putting away an innocent woman. Knowingly, intentionally, and purposefully. And the same goes for giving a murdering gang drug lord Jack Boy a sweet deal. 7 years for murder. With game time, you know, maybe 5.5.
During or after, whether there was one guns or two guns, whether he was the driver on the first trip, but then there was a citation. You know, his defense to all that was, well, you know, we were...
Good evening, Mr. Derek. How you doing? Good to see you, man.
high and drunk. But that didn't make sense because Trooper Downing's like, you know, I don't know if he was a captain, a lieutenant, but he was high-ranking. And he's like, if that were going on, if people were smoking marijuana, they were drinking inside of a car, everybody knows that smell would be in there. And an FHP trooper would have pulled them out and questioned them on that. He's doing that as a defense to getting caught in a lie. Because if he gets caught, he can go, hey, I was drunk, I was high. This is not a dumb man. And along that line, he says he can't read or write.
You know, as much as I like Cristopher DeCoste, I don't know if it's just because I've seen him do this, you know, quite a few times. I mean, I see him reaching, you know, that was a reach. A little bit of overselling going on, but on the first watch, would I pick up on it so much? Not really. And on balance, I think he's done a tremendous job of the closing argument with what he had to work with.
That's odd. We know he was driving because of the citation. And I'm pretty sure most of the people in this courtroom know that when you get a driver's license in the state of Florida, you got to take a monitored, written exam.
Good night, kitten. Come back tomorrow.
That's a way to defend against the lies. Lewis, we want you to look. I can't read.
Oh, I've just realised that Kitty in Discord is Cosmic Kitten, right? Obviously. I'm like, who's this? Who's this kitty just walked in? It must be Cosmic Kitten.
That guy can read. Don't be fooled. About 40 witnesses in this case. Not one. All of them combined, all of the impeachment combined for all of the other witnesses does not equal the amount of times that this guy was impeached. He's smart. But when you're making up lies, and we all know the phrase, the devil is in the details. And that's where we were able to, by digging deep into what he was saying, to realize this guy is not telling the truth. Who is he protecting? What is he protecting? Despite many, many rehearsals, many times that he gave this statement, he still couldn't keep it straight. Despite help from the government. There's no recordings of some of the meetings. No recordings. Why would that happen? That's inexcusable. The Tallahassee Police Department doesn't have a policy that you can't record. The FBI, Agent Sanford said, well, it's our policy. We don't record under certain scenarios, but you always do a report. And when he was confronted with that, no, I didn't do the one person he interviewed where there's no recording and no report. The only time. They don't even trust him. They don't even trust Luis Rivera. But these prosecutors want you to trust him. This man can't be trusted. Investigator Isom, thankfully, did a report of one of those meetings. And he said how at the beginning Luis Rivera was sworn in to tell the truth and the whole truth. But he didn't say anything about a third trip. He didn't say anything about Wendy walking into the house. That came out years later. And he never said anything about King Little Anthony. Now this government, in their defensive work, has tried to say, hey, it has nothing to do with the Latin Kings. They're trying to protect their convictions. He's trying to protect his brothers. They're trying to say that there's no connection to the Latin Kings, but then Luis Rivera is saying King Little Anthony went up on a trip. Well, that's a connection. No investigation done. Nobody ever met with him. Nobody ever tried to find him. Conveniently, he's now dead. And nobody will ever know. Whether Luis Rivera was telling the truth or not about this guy, I have no idea. But all I know is that this government didn't do anything with it, and they're trying to fight against a connection when clearly their star witness is saying that there was a connection. Let's compare Luis Rivera to another witness we had in this case. We had Jeffrey Lacass. And everybody should remember Jeffrey Lacass. He testified early in the trial. And he was a one-time boyfriend of Wendy Adelson. Now, Jeffrey Lacass was testifying about things many years ago. His inconsistencies were reasonable. Memories fade with time. Excuse me. At the beginning of the investigation, he was a suspect. Now, the government brought it up on close. We don't think Jeffrey Lacass was involved, nor has any argument been made. But at the beginning, he was a suspect. And he was removed as a suspect because they objectively investigated him. He showed bank records, they got surveillance from Walmart, they spoke to him, and they cleared him. Nothing like that was done with Ms. Magbanua. But they had multiple recorded interviews. They interviewed this guy who they believed is a suspect. Again, this is before they've committed to their bogus theory. Jeffrey Lacass is a suspect. Look, he's dating Wendy Adelson. He's possibly protecting her. He leaves town right around the time that it happens. Could be something there, but they objectively investigated him. They had multiple interviews, and they were recorded. He also gave a deposition. So, like Luis Rivera, he gave multiple statements, but when he got up on the stand, he had a reasonable memory of events. He was able to remember things. In line with Miss Magbanua, I can remember some, I can't remember all of it exactly. What was the name of the restaurant you were at? That's reasonable. Somehow, Luis Rivera, his memory gets better in time with things and worse in other areas. It's because it's not based in reality. It's based on trying to weave a lie. Now, Jeffrey Lacass was up there. He was not evasive. He answered the questions. Now, Jeffrey Lacass, a professor at FSU, very smart guy, book smart guy. Luis Rivera, maybe not book smart, but definitely a street smart guy. Again, hundreds of people underneath him. At the age of 15. That's a born leader. And also a born criminal. Mr. Zengane went over this with you. I'm going to go through it a little bit more. Talking about jury instructions and how you should weigh his testimony. After the enumerated topics, you're going to have this one where it says you must consider the testimony of some witnesses with more caution than others. And what they're talking about are people that are in Luis Rivera's situation. Defendants who say they committed a crime with somebody else and are going to get a better deal by testifying. This is the same instruction you'd have if, a guy buying drugs is going to testify against a guy selling a small amount of drugs for low-level felony cases. Never is it more applicable than in a case where the witness was spared the death penalty and got a few years on top of an already huge sentence on a federal case. Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? My answer to that is no, because none of it is true. His response to it, I was drunk and high, I don't remember. Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? Not at all. Because he was impeached by the actual facts in the case. Not other witnesses, not stuff that by the evidence in the case. The kids were in preschool. There's no phone call. Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? No. Did the witness have some interest in how the case should be decided? They've got him by the neck. He violated the agreement. He's looking at a violation of probation. Does the witness's testimony agree with the other testimony and other evidence in the case? No. The electronic evidence, the evidence that can't lie, cell phone records. I don't think Creative Preschool is going to be lying. It's a stipulation between the parties, meaning it's true. Has the witness been offered or received any money, preferred treatment, or other benefit? He gets to serve his state sentence in a federal facility, and the benefit will be the massive deal that he has got. Had any pressure or threat been used against him? Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court multiple times? Has the witness been convicted of a felony? 5 times. Federal racketeering case. Now, for those of you that don't know, the RICO statute, that's the things that they use to prosecute the mob. This is for sophisticated crimes. These are for major crimes. And he's also got a murder conviction. He's pretty much checking every box on the jury instructions of why you should not trust him. But again, they want you to trust him. A guy who can't be trusted. The person that you must believe. You must. The case against Sigfredo Garcia is different. The case against Catherine Magbanua, you must believe Luis Rivera to convict. He cannot be trusted. We talked about that pile being a crime was committed, this pile being the evidence against Catherine. This testimony doesn't belong in either of those piles.
Physical theater. I'm going to screw up the paper in front of the jury. All right, we've got one more segment to. I've got to push through, guys. I've got to push through. I'm brain dead, man. I have not had much sleep the last few days, and it's freezing. Not too much to say on this one, really. I mean, we've said some points. We've shared some points of Cristopher DeCoste. We've got one more segment to go. It's like 26 minutes. I'm not going to break it into 2 parts. We just got to get through it.
One's right there. Let's go back to the how and the why. Rivera, we've reviewed it. How and why are we here in trial? The government, desperate.
You're going into a different area. We're getting pretty close to needing a break for the jury.
Different area, perfect time. Thank you.
Take 10 minutes. Right?
All right, guys. Just let me grab that other video. Last one. Last call for coffees, guys. Last call. Oh shit.
All rise and come to order. Court is back in session. Secretary, remain standing for the jury.
Yeah, Queen Olive, I'm feeling that as well, but it just seems crazy to not finish it. It seems crazy to cut it into 2 parts, but it does go on. You know, we've got 27 minutes.
Everybody be seated, please.
Maybe speed it up a bit.
Proceed, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Your Honor. Still on the topic of Luis Rivera, the government brought up how although he got most of the things wrong, he got some facts right. Like, how would he know that Dan Markel was leaving town? Well, he had the evidence, but if he's in an agreement with Sigfredo Garcia, he's going to know that information. If, to clear that up, Charles Adelson is in agreement with Sigfredo Garcia, he's going to know that information. And in the bullet hole, again, I don't doubt. He's in the trash now, so I don't have his photo.
Thanks, Ryden. You sound like you're going to fall over. I am about to fall over. And my feet are about to fall off. Thank you, Ryden, for those coffees. You're very kind.
But I don't doubt that he was up there. But the government coming up here and saying, well, he got these, that's like a parent walking in and talking to the teacher of their child and saying, look, I know my kid failed the test miserably, but he got those 2 right, so he should pass. That wouldn't fly in an algebra test? It sure as heck should not fly in a first-degree murder trial. Let's go back to the how and the why. We talked about Rivera. We know how and why he did what he did. The government, they're desperate. For the Adelsons, who I agree, clear motive. And as Catherine said, guilt. But this, I want to feel and I want to think that it was not a matter of we're going to paint a target, that it was more a matter of their judgment being clouded. That it threw their focus off, that they then make a deal with the shooter. And we'll get to that. Luis Rivera was the shooter. Wendy Adelson, as we saw from their presentation, the one with clear motive, their witness. Again, we're talking about the how and the why. The why. Catherine put pressure on her for cooperation, and then we'll get our case. What they didn't count on, however, that Kathy Magbanua was innocent. And here we are in trial.
And I find this really interesting. You know, let's say that, let's just assume that Tara Kawas and Cristopher DeCoste are doing the bidding of the Adelsons, right? That by helping Catherine Magbanua get off, they're protecting the Adelsons. Yeah, because that would remove at least one of the connections between, well, yeah, you see what I mean? That's what's assumed, right? But what I like about how part of their defense of Catherine Magbanua is agreeing with the state that it was the Adelsons behind the murder, just not through Catherine, right? They agree about Charlie, they agree about Wendy, they agree about Donna and everything else, right? But if they fail with Catherine, if the jury don't buy what they're selling about Catherine, it's like, do you see what I mean? It's like if the jury say, we think what all the stuff that you were saying you were full of shit. Well, part of what they were saying is that the Adelsons were involved, you know. So it's just it's difficult to explain. especially now. But yeah, I might try and work that out a bit clearer and bring it up again, because I remember thinking this before. It's like, if they get Catherine off, good. If the jury don't believe what we were saying, then all of what we're saying is under the same tablecloth, right? Tablecloth, whatever. Random analogy. It's under the same umbrella, right? They are all under the same umbrella. Under the same fucking tablecloth. What does that mean, Metrix? It means nothing. Oh, it's painted with the same brush. If one thing they're saying is full of shit, everything they're saying is full of shit. And part of the things that they're saying is the Adelsons were involved.
Now, the government, during their cross-examination of Ms. Magbanua, offensively made the comment of a payoff. First, you know this, what attorneys say is not evidence. It's a sign of their desperation. There's no evidence of it. It was a baseless attack to try to plant a seed in your mind that she's sitting up there and testifying and is taking this case to trial for other reasons. It's also offensive because there's no amount of money that you could pay a mother of two. I'm not a mother. There's no amount of money that you could pay, but I know this. There's no amount of money that you could pay a mother of two to risk never seeing her children again. So let me get this. Their thought is that Catherine sacrifices seeing her children so that Wendy can be with hers. They can't see it. They can't understand it. That she's innocent. She wasn't involved. How and why?
You see, that makes no sense. But the way he says it brings some people on board, right? Catherine sacrifices seeing her children so Wendy can be with hers?
So then how did this murder happen? Look, I'm in no position to get up here and say, well, I'm positive that's what happened. But in looking at the evidence and looking at the facts, there's a more reasonable scenario of what happened. The government tried to say that there were no connections whatsoever between Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia. But there were. And again, it wasn't through Catherine Magbanua. It was about her.
Absolutely, Amy. Georgia does the best closing compared to every other attorney that has been in this case. Absolutely. I mean, she's the closer. She's the ultimate closer.
So let's talk about the position that each one of them were in. Charles Adelson wanted the murder to happen. We know that from Jeffrey Lacass. He had money. Sigfredo Garcia wanted Catherine Magbanua back. We know that from multiple witnesses. And he had the means. The government's response to this theory is that there's no evidence of a connection in between these two gentlemen. They asked Sergeant Corbett on the stand. He'd gone through hundreds of thousands of messages and iCloud information for Charles Adelson. Is there any indication of communication between the two? And his answer was no. But on my cross-examination, I brought out weeks before the murder, months before the murder, there was an indication of communication. Now, I'm not trying to say the communication happened that day, but it was clear. Sigfredo Garcia was trying to get in contact. And Catherine Magbanua, through her messages, knew that. To get in contact with Charles Adelson. Now, their response is, well, there's no cell phone communications from the numbers that we have. That presupposes that the communication would have only happened over the phone, or that there would have to be connection. Maybe, wild thought, they were communicating through other means because it was talking about a murder. They want you to believe that there's no possibility that at any point in time Sigfredo Garcia confronted Charles Adelson around the time of these messages. He's driving me crazy about his objection about the two of them being together. They believe he walked into a garage and shot a man in the head, but that he doesn't have the ability to confront the man that's standing between him and the woman that he loves. There's also the confrontation on July 1st. We'll get into that more. But there was a connection between the two of them. Not through Catherine Magbanua, about her. But the government, their response, well, there's no evidence of this. That's not how this works. That's not their burden. We talked about this during jury selection, what their burden is. How it's not just a matter of them giving a reasonable explanation and saying, it fits. They need to have enough evidence to prove that there is no other possible reasonable explanation.
I saw that as well, Carrie. I like that. That was good.
You enough letters. And you remember the example in voir dire. To get you to that point, because again, just because it fits doesn't mean...
I think he should always be on 1.25 speed, you know, in life.
that it's the answer.
Can we see it again? Where was it? Yeah.
The government's response to this theory is that there's no evidence. Or that there would have to be connection. There's also the confrontation on July 1st. We'll get into that more. But there was a connection between the two of them. Not through Catherine Magbanua, about her. But the government, their response, well, there's no evidence of this. That's not how this works. That's not their burden. We talked about this during jury selection, what their burden is. How it's not just a matter of them giving a reasonable explanation and saying, it fits. They need to have enough evidence to prove that there is no other possible reasonable explanation to give you enough letters. And you remember the example in voir dire. To get you to that point, because again, just because it fits doesn't mean that it's the answer.
One other thing I really like about watching lawyers at the podium, and Georgia's got some great examples, is how they pen through their notes. You know, he's not got a script up there. He's got, reminders, some structure, some flow, some journey through information, and each lawyer has their own style about how they go through it with a pen. Kind of, it's like checking stuff off, I guess. Basically. Or circling points to come back to and stuff like that. That alone in itself is an art form, and I quite like DeCoste's version.
Mr. Zenkine talked about the burden of proof. I'm not going to go through it again, but this is here for the protection of all of those accused, for the protection of all of us as citizens, including you as jurors, so that years from now, there's not regret for having made a wrong decision. That's why, those are the reasons why this burden of proof is
so that years from now, there's not regret for having made a wrong decision. You see, that could go either way. That could go either way.
Third topic. Catherine. Evidence of Catherine Magbanua's innocence that's just been pushed to the side. They have years' worth of text messages, years, hundreds of thousands of text messages with these people that they believe she was involved with. Nothing about involvement in a murder. Wiretaps, months' worth, hundreds of hours, nothing. Her actions. Now, you best believe, had she gotten rid of her phone number or phone, they'd be up here arguing. Evidence of guilt. But she didn't. She had the same phone number up until she was arrested. She changed out her phone just like most of us do with iPhones. I think I still have a 7, but some people, they replace them regularly, yearly when the new one comes out. I'm not saying that's what she did, but the idea that she would still have the same phone years later, no, it's natural. You swap out phones. You upgrade your phone. Sigfredo Garcia got rid of his phone. Luis Rivera got rid of his phone. You would imagine that if she's involved in a conspiracy with these others, they would have told her, hey, this is what you got to do. The deposits. No deposits of cash for Luis Rivera, no deposits of cash for Sigfredo Garcia. But Catherine Magbanua, right around the time of the homicide, deposits money into an account. They want you to believe that she's smart enough to have pulled off this crime, but that's stupid enough to have done that. Talked about it in voir dire. You cannot be smart and stupid at the same time. Well, actually, I take that back, because Luis Rivera tried to do it. She didn't flee. Had she taken 2 steps when they tried to arrest her, they would be up here arguing she tried to get away. We bring out the fact she didn't do anything. She continued with her life, continued.
They brought out the big guns when they arrested her. They fucking surrounded her car. I mean, it was like, yeah, it's only, that's from the police report. I guess it's all on body cam somewhere. It's not released. Be good to see. She pissed herself. She pissed her pants.
With her children, and they want to say, well, that's not evidence of innocence. Normally, maybe that would be a valid argument, but when you have the level of publicity that this case has had, the father of your children's been arrested, Luis Rivera's been arrested, her name's getting dragged through the mud, probable cause affidavits for first-degree murder are released in the media, major outlets are doing specials on the case. She was born in the Philippines, speaks our language. Somebody guilty would have left. She stayed. Let's go back to Luis Rivera. Violent gang leader. The lead investigators and agents on this case tried to dance around and go, wow, I don't know about that. Charged with murder, head of a gang since 15. Violent gang leader. Convicted many times over, RICO murder. Supplies, he rented a car, rented the hotel, bought the bullets that entered Dan Markel's head. Bought the gun that fired those bullets. They made a deal with him. No death, do a few more years, didn't tell him about the violation of probation. A couple of years for that guy. Katie Magbanua, college graduate. First time through the system. Miss Kaplan herself said, and it came out in evidence, as the key to her own freedom. If she were willing to cooperate, if she had any information, which she does not, they'd probably give her the key to the city. There's only one reason why a single mother of 2 young children
You see, I
would sit in custody.
I gotta, what's the fucking word? My vocabulary's just gone. I gotta, what's the opposite of, like, say something is good? Criticize. I've got to criticize that, Chris. That shit like that goes nowhere. It came out in evidence that she has the key to her own freedom. If she knew anything. If she gave them what they wanted, they'd probably give her the key to the city. What the fuck does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, the words, but why? It's just, that's ridiculous. That's not going anywhere. That's not going to touch hearts or minds.
For 3 years in confinement, risking it all. She's innocent. That is the only explanation. Let's draw a comparison, guys, please. Let's draw a comparison over to Wendy Adelson, their witness. Somebody who they believe was, I don't know who they think is behind, that they believe is involved. Their witness, a trained attorney, had to be subpoenaed, had to be given, and the judge explained it, immunity. She laughed at them. Laughed at them. No, I'm not going to be arrested. Ms. Kappelman had her on the stand, somebody she believes is behind this, didn't ask her the tough questions. Had her on the stand and could have put her on the spot and didn't do it. Now, let's compare that witness over to Katie Magbanua. Not an attorney. No immunity. Didn't have to testify. Everything on the line, subjecting herself to cross-examination, actual examination by Ms. Kappelman, by a trained and experienced attorney. Grilled on facts from years ago.
Damn good one, too, huh?
Years ago, after years in confinement. Nothing incorrect. She even confessed to what would be crimes. Not reporting cash tips on her tax returns. Look, I don't condone it, but I'm imagining it's a very common practice when it comes to cash tips. But she admitted to it. What does that mean? It means she's forthcoming. Doesn't mean that she was involved in a murder. Now, we did it for Luis Rivera. Let's do it now for Catherine Magbanua. But before I do it, remember, this is not a civil case. Do you believe Catherine Magbanua more than Luis Rivera? It's not that tug of war that we talked about in jury selection. It's that rope in gym class hanging from the ceiling that the government has to climb all by themselves. So it's not a matter of do you believe Luis Rivera more or Catherine Magbanua. If that were the case, I have no doubt that you would say, I believe Catherine Magbanua more. But I'm not trying to draw a comparison in between the two, but it's important to evaluate for Catherine Magbanua. Did the witness seem to have an opportunity? Your Honor, is that big enough for you?
Better worry about them more than me. I know what it says.
Did the witness seem to have an opportunity to see and know the things about which the witness testified? Did the witness seem to have an accurate memory? Was the witness honest and straightforward in answering the attorney's questions? Did the witness have some interest in how the case should be decided? The answer to that, of course. Everything's on the line here for her. Does the witness testimony agree with the other testimony and other evidence in the case? Yes. Had they investigated it, they would know that it all matches up. Has the witness been offered or received any money, preferred treatment, or other benefit in order to get the witness to testify? No. Had any pressure or threat been used against the witness that affected the truth of the witness's testimony? Threats were made on her, but not in this context. Did the witness at some other time make a statement that is inconsistent with the testimony he or she gave in court? Has the witness been convicted of a felony? Luis Rivera, all those boxes are checked. Catherine Magbanua? Or no? This is a case that began in desperation. Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia. The connection, not through Catherine Magbanua, but about her. It is no coincidence, that right when the murder finally happens, Charles Adelson, and we know it from the messages, we know it from Catherine Magbanua, ghosted her, broke up with her. They keep wanting to say that there's no contact in between Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia. Again, we know that in late 2013, and we know it from Luis Rivera, he was following them because he objected so much to it. He was potentially calling Charles Adelson. The progression of that is at some point in time you confront him. Now, the one problem with the prosecution's theory, again, if you get deeper into it, things start to not make sense. July 1st, there's this confrontation, there's this fight between Charles Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia. Now, Sigfredo Garcia doesn't run up to Catherine Magbanua's window. He runs up to Charles Adelson's window and starts pounding on it. 17 days later, the murder happens. You can't resolve that. You can't figure it out under their theory that in this whole thought, let me sidetrack for a second, because the government said something in their close that potentially Catherine was playing the middle and that Charles didn't know that on the other end it was Sigfredo, and Sigfredo didn't know on the other end that it was for Charles. Remember what Luis Rivera said. We're doing it for the dentist's sister. Then they would have known exactly, and everybody knew who the dentist was, that they're doing it for Charles Adelson. But it doesn't make sense, 17 days before the murder happens, that these guys are fighting with each other and somehow Catherine's caught in the middle of it. What makes more sense is that the agreement was, you break up with her and get away from her, I'll do this for you. But he didn't. That trip in June to Key West was supposed to be, and we know it from Agent Sanford, the goodbye tour. But on July 1st, they're still hanging out together. Was there a situation that Charles Adelson felt that the other end didn't live up to their end of the bargain because it didn't happen in June? 17 days later, after this argument, he's dead, and Charles Adelson breaks up with Catherine Magbanua. Now, again, this is a case that began in desperation and it continued in desperation. Luis Rivera and the government. Rivera, he wanted his life. He wanted his freedom. When I say life, I'm not saying outside. He literally wanted to live because they were trying to kill him. And he wanted his freedom. The government, desperation, wanted to be able to move forward with their theory. Now, their presentation shows this desperation. They gave bits and pieces. Because the more bits and pieces that you gave, the more information, that peg that they're trying to get into the round hole, all of a sudden it becomes more square, bigger and bigger, and it no longer fits. And they were also painting that target. We had to show the rest. The defense, we had to show the rest of that information. Now, let me give you some examples of how they did this. The government wanted to draw the connection in between Catherine Magbanua and Wendy Adelson, right? And they presented this photo to you. Defense Exhibit 41. You haven't seen this yet. That's a real photo. Catherine's credit card right there. Out of the 3 versions of this photo, now these look the same, but if you look at Catherine's glasses in relation to Wendy's shoulder, you'll see that it actually moves. Out of 3 photos that they have of this day, they present to you the photo without Catherine's credit card.
Okay, I'm going to bring it down to regular speed for his crescendo. Play it, Chris.
Because this would indicate that Catherine's paying for those drinks, paying for that day, paying for herself. But the attempts to guide you, or guide is not the word, to give you the wrong perception, the limited perception of the case. We go back to...
But there was a W on that credit card, you know. I think Grish's video on the beach day was largely discredited. But there was certainly a W on that credit card. And had it have been any other letter other than a W, it probably wouldn't have been distinguishable. It was clearly a W, and it was Wendy's credit card.
Mary Hull, the income analysis. 2013, she didn't explain that. She didn't explain what those dashes were. And then they started talking about the deposit transactions and how Catherine was going to different banks to make deposits. Again, they have no information as to the location of these ATMs and their location in relation to each other. But one thing that we pointed out, this was normal behavior for Catherine, where she would make deposits at 2 different banks on the same day. Again, trying to paint that picture, paint that target brighter and brighter. It continued when they were talking to Sergeant Chris Corbett about text messages, and this happened yesterday where they actually only had him read part of the message, where Charles Adelson offered to help out. I had to get up and read the rest of it with Sergeant Corbett, which was, no, I'm good. And then enter in other text messages talking about how she was paying him back for loans. One of the big pieces of evidence from Luis Rivera, what they believe is evidence, that's his story, is the morning of July 19th. Now again, the stuff with the cell phone locations, that's generalized areas. Don't be misled by their evidence, believing that that means that somebody was at an exact location. We know from the experts that I could be here with my phone, but pinging off a tower miles away. But one thing that Luis Rivera said, he goes, Catherine called me. When the government had Agent Corbett up on the stand, offensively, and this is their attempts to make their case fit, to misguide you, they went and they referenced the 1022 call. They went first to the 1022 call because that's a call from Katie Magbanua to Luis Rivera. What they didn't do was point out where I had to come up on cross-examination, as if you missed it yourselves, which I doubt, that the first call was from Luis Rivera to Katie Magbanua. It's offensive that the...
Absolutely, Julia Nelson. Do others agree that Chris DeCoste did the best with Wendy on the stand thus far of all the attorneys? Well, it'd be neck and neck. I think probably Georgia's direct of Wendy in Charlie's trial was better, more fruitful, but Georgia has steadily increased the pressure. Katie 1, Katie 2, Charlie Adelson. Each time she examines Wendy, it was quite polite and cordial at the 2019. Then a little bit more heated in 2022, and then in 2023, when Charlie was on trial, when Georgia was questioning Wendy, she was fucking swinging her around like a dead cat.
If that's a thing. I'm just making stuff up now. What did I say before? Under the tablecloth. It's all under the same tablecloth. I'm so tired. Yeah. No, Georgia's examination in Charlie's trial was the best of any examination to Wendy, I'd say. But Chris did a great job, fantastic job in Katie too. Great. I mean, just brilliant.
The government, the ones that should be the most transparent and truthful in this, should be presenting this evidence correctly. But instead, they're trying to argue the evidence in a way that fits their theory, instead of just being transparent, objective, and straightforward and giving it to you to make the decision. We had to do that. We shouldn't have to.
Again, drawing on the incompetencies of the state, and how the defense has gone the extra mile for the sake of the jury so that they have the complete information. That's another little tactic, right? You owe us something. We've done something for you. It's very subtle, but it's implied. Okay? This guy is good.
This is your conspiracy.
I'd like to see Cristopher DeCoste interrogate Russell Williams, to be honest. I mean, it's very... There's such an intersection between sales, therapists, interrogators, defense counsels. It's just... There's a very, very close thing about... It's about persuasion, isn't it? You know? It's all of those things are about persuasion. I guess maybe less so with therapy, but certainly sales, interrogations, and closing arguments, they're all about persuasion.
There was connection in between the two. It was about Catherine Magbanua, not through her. Now, the framers of our Constitution were genius in the way that they set up our government. The government has immense power. We all know that. But there are limitations. They can't elect themselves, and they can't determine the guilt or innocence of a person. The reason why the framers took that from the government, from the judiciary, is that they feared that they would become biased. And that's why they entrusted it to the people, knowing that they were the only ones that could be objective in the review of evidence in a case. Now, Your Honor, if I can have one brief second.
Okay.
The government's desperation, and I promised that I would come back to Luis Rivera one last time. Their desperation led to blindness. I promise I'm almost done. Their desperation has led to their blindness of facts. Luis Rivera was a shooter. Luis Rivera got up on the stand, he told you how Dan Markel was on the phone, how Dan Markel put his arm up. Explain to me how he could see in that dark garage and see all of that. He knows that because he's the one that pulled the gun on Dan Markel and killed him. There's no way you're seeing that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a wrongful prosecution looks like. It's within your power to stop it from becoming a wrongful conviction. Catherine Magbanua was innocent. She wasn't involved in a conspiracy to murder Professor Dan Markel. She didn't solicit anybody. She was in no way involved with his murder. She's been in custody for 3 years. It's time for her to go home. Thank you, Your Honor.
Was that a strong finish? She's been in custody for 3 years. It's time for her to go home. Send her home. I think I would have added that. Send her home. You know? With some nice pointing on the podium. Send her home. Well, we got all the way through it, folks. I was thinking about doing Mr. Hand Grenade at the end of this, but I just don't think I can. Oh, yeah. So I guess we're shutting it down. We're shutting it down. Well, that's okay. If you do want to buy us a coffee, keep it. We need a chamomile tea. Oh, man. I think I'm going to sleep for about 30 hours now. Okay? Yeah. Well, we're gonna love you and leave you, folks. It's been great. It's been great. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you to all the viewers. Thank you to all the commenters. The coffee getters, the super sticker getters, the super chatters, the subscribers, the Patreon members, the merch heads, living it up in the merch shop, buying merch, buying Judge Everett mugs for your cats, you crazy merch heads. Should we show the cat one more time? Where's the cat? There we go. Look, there's our good friend, Mr. Pinto Peabody, with a Judge Everett cup. Slept like a baby. In a range of colours, head over to merch.truecrimemetrics.com for all of your Adelson merch. Don't Be an Adelson t-shirts, Don't Be an Adelson hoodies. I think those are some of my favourite. Check it out. You never know. Yeah. Okay, what are we doing? We're saying good night. We're saying God bless. We're saying don't be an Adelson. Don't be a Wendy. Have a safe drive home. And we'll see you. Yeah, I guess I'll be back tomorrow. Probably twice again, because I just can't stay away. It's Adelson month. Subscribe to the channel, like, share, leave a comment. And good night. True Crime Metrix out.